Welcome to Oscar Sunday. I'm Austin Johnson,
And I'm Adam Johnson.
and today we're going to be talking about Hoop Dreams from 1994, which received a single nomination at the 67th Academy Awards for Best Film Editing, which is pretty silly because obviously it's one of the most acclaimed documentaries of the 90s and one of the most acclaimed sports documentaries of all time. The reason we're doing this film today is because, well, we're recording this on Friday night, but Sunday, when you can listen to this, it is the last day of the NBA regular season. Uh, if you know Connor, he's not the biggest basketball fan, so we figured we kind of do something a little different here. It's Adam's first time on Oscar Sunday. He's my brother, and I'd say our biggest bonding point is basketball. Has been for a long, long time. So doing Hoop Dreams, a movie we both really like, just seemed to make sense, and we're both very excited for the playoffs, which start on April 16th. So almost about a week out, and we can't wait. Just for some fun. The playoffs are still not totally set, but I want to hear just off the bat. Let's do a little basketball talk. What are you thinking with the like who's coming out of the West, who's coming to the East? The East is very jumbled up. The Heat have taken the one seed, if I'm not mistaken, at 52 wins.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's just kind of these teams, from I would say from Boston, Philly, all the way down to like Cleveland and Brooklyn. These are some good basketball teams.
Toronto, yeah.
Toronto's on a surge. Yeah, they barely won tonight against the fucking Houston Rockets, but it's the East is kind of this new conference that has been bad for the past 20 years or so, and now they're on kind of a rise. And what do you think? I think the Suns are safe to say.
Suns are clearly the favorite in the West with everyone healthy, and they are clearly the favorite in the West and the favorite to win the title, in my opinion. But the East playoffs. I was talking about that with our cousin Zach today at a little part-time thing I've been doing with working with him. It's going to be the most open Eastern Conference playoffs, and there's been other years where it's like slightly open, but high quality plus open. That hasn't happened since the 80s. I mean that sounds crazy, but it's like, the combination of the two of high quality teams plus it being like relatively open. There's been really high quality teams, but only like one or two, but there's five or six you could legitimately see coming out of the conference. And it's hard to make a call until I see the matchups and how the bracket's going to break out, because it's going to be a rock, paper, scissors thing. And then Boston, if they can avoid some of the heavy hitters in that first round and play Chicago in the first round, which it looks like they're going to do, and then they get Robert Williams back in the second round, I think Boston can make the finals. But my kind of suspicion, the Philly thing could go one of two ways. They could be a disaster. They could lose in the first round of the Toronto Raptors, or I could see them putting it together, playing that kind of playoff style, getting their shooters, back healthy and ready to roll, and like make a little run, because Embiid and Harden, could be that good. But Harden has had so many playoff flameouts that it's hard to really believe in them as an actual finals contender. Plus, they're going to be on the road after the first round. So I don't know. I still think Milwaukee's the safest bet. So a repeat of last year's finals, Bucks and Suns, I think is the safest bet. But the matchups are going to be huge in terms of how the East shakes out and see who really could actually make it. But yeah, I'm pretty excited for the playoffs. And also, you said, playoffs start April 16th, but we have those play-in games before that. They start Tuesday. So just a couple days away, which I'm super excited for too, because, our hometown team, the San Antonio Spurs, are going to be in it again. Going to be in it again.
Yeah, we have a chance.
So you're saying there's a chance.
A
small chance.
To play the Suns or the Grizzlies.
And get disrupted. Oh, no, just be the Suns. We can't get up to 7.
That's right. Because we're in the back.
So
back of the bus.
The 8 seed is the highest the Spurs can climb, and they would get absolutely demolished by the Suns. But if we made it, I would like to go to a playoff game, and that'd be kind of cool. So
Well, and it's always great to get that experience when your players don't have it. From Murray to Jakob.
Oh, Murray has some.
Yeah, but does he really as the guy?
Oh no,
no. Jakob would be great for him to get a go against DeAndre Ayton, Keldon Johnson, to get some chances at Mikal Bridges and Devin Booker. It'd be cool. I think we lose in 4 or 5, but probably 4.
4 if it's Phoenix. Yeah. Well, it would be Phoenix.
Phoenix is
an all-time great team.
They really are. This regular season, they've gone through injuries, they've gone through all kinds of adversity, and yet people don't really talk about them in the general media. They rather talk about the Lakers, who have just kind of sucked all year, and I think they like it that way.
Yeah.
I think Monty Williams and company, they like it that way. So, I'm with you. I think the Bucks are like the safest pick. It's kind of boring to but they have the best player. They have Giannis on their side, a guy who obviously has proven himself. But I think I'm with you with Boston. If Robert Williams comes back and is 100%, I'm choosing them. They've got this tiny window this tiny window with Tatum and Brown and all these guys, and Marcus Smart, and of course Ime Udoka, a former Spur and former guy who is kind of understudy of Pop, right, of Popovich. So I think it's cool that he's kind of led them to have this certain style. They play with a lot of aggression nowadays, and they're a lot of fun to watch. So I'm kind of rooting for the Celtics, but yeah, I think the Bucks are the safest pick. I also would love Toronto. I love teams that don't really have a guy per se. It's just kind of 5 or 6 dudes that all can really hoop, and that's one of my favorite things about the NBA these days. Is it's almost more effective to have kind of the depth. Have guys off the bench that really get it.
Well, it's kind of Miami too, right? I mean, the 1 seed Miami. I mean, that's very similar to them. I mean, their overall quality is a little bit higher than Toronto's, but it's a very similar style in terms of like, hey, there's not one guy that just like dominates the ball. Like it's kind of equal opportunity offense, and they're just a really really gritty defensive team that's very similar to Toronto. Pascal Siakam for Toronto has been phenomenal in the second half of the season. I think Toronto, the issue is their road to get there would be so hard because they're on the road against Philly, on the road against Miami, and then on the road against either Boston or Milwaukee. It's like that's a murderous row of teams they're going to have to get through. I just don't see that. They don't have the firepower to get through all 3 of those teams.
No, but it'd be wonderful. I mean, if they were to get to second round conference finals, like what great experience for Van Vliet and Siakam and Scotty Barnes. God, I love Scotty Barnes. Yeah. Love Scotty Barnes. He's definitely my favorite rookie. No, it's been a good season, but I'm ready for heads up, like intense basketball.
For sure.
March Madness just happened. It was kind of like this appetizer where I was like, oh, I like this.
Yeah. Well, I like real stakes.
I like stakes. Yeah. Ultimately, I don't love college basketball, but I love stakes, and I love when everything's on the line. Who doesn't, right? Especially when you have these freaks of nature playing. So I wanted to kind of
if we're not careful, we can talk about the NBA for hours.
Yeah, no, of course, this is Oscar Sunday. It is a
movie podcast.
A movie podcast. But it has that one nomination, and we're gonna look at the 67th Academy Awards.
Crazy, it has one nomination.
Yeah, it's bonkers. I think it's really cool that it was up for film editing, though. This is a documentary that was filmed over 5 years from our 2 main characters, William Gates and Arthur Agee. They're 14 when the film starts, and it goes all the way till they're entering college. One of them going to community college to play, and one of them going to Marquette, a pretty big D1 nice basketball school. So it's this 5-year journey essentially, and 250 hours of footage that they narrow down to, which is crazy. I mean, it's 3 hours, but when you look at the big scheme, it's like that's got to be really difficult to do. So I like that it gets a shout for best film editing, going against Pulp Fiction and Forrest Gump. Obviously Forrest Gump is the movie that wins the big award, the big best picture, and kind of dominates the ceremony. Shawshank's at this ceremony, Lion King. 94 is a really good year. Speed. So we'll look at the 67th Academy Awards a little bit later, and we'll give our own awards out to Hoop Dreams later. But I do want to talk about like this film and just all the stuff it entails about the American dream, about basketball, about how hard we push young kids to just latch onto something when they're 14 or 15 years old, and like this is the only way you can make it. Is just so scary, and just kind of the
and the racial dynamics are
my gosh, huge, yeah. So I want to get into that, but I also want to hear from you because you've been coaching for a long time now. So you coached me your first year of actually coaching, like head coaching a team. I was in 8th grade, and our team was pretty good. Me, Arnold Adame, Chase Higgins. We had a pretty good season. We were probably one of the better private school teams in San Antonio for like that age group. We were pretty talented, and then from there that was at a school called Bracken Christian School, which
tiny little school.
Yeah, which is also where you went. You graduated, and you were all state your junior year, right?
And junior year, yeah.
Senior year, your first team?
Second team.
Second team all state senior year. You played at Bracken sophomore, junior, and senior year, and all 3 years, had some accolades and did really well. Clearly the best player on the team, like not even close. And you immediately started coaching. Like you knew that you didn't want to keep playing at a high level. Like you probably could have gone D2, right?
D3.
You think so?
Yeah. I mean, I could have made a roster, a D3
but you would have
roster.
played D3.
Yeah, I would have actually played
yeah.
D3.
Or
yeah.
like at a community college or
Yeah.
something.
Yeah.
You could have really played. You know, but it was clear that your interests were more about kind of bringing kids along and allowing them to fall in love with the game how they saw fit, meeting them halfway. If they were crazy about it and wanted to talk basketball nonstop, that's great. But if they also want to talk about this, they're kind of interested in basketball. I could see like early on that was kind of what you latched on to. So you were at Bracken coaching for
2 years.
2 years. And then went to College Station.
Yes. So I was at a school called Brazos Christian for 4 years in the Bryan College Station area. And then I came back and coached it. The one kind of full like varsity head coaching job I had was at a tiny startup school called Living Rock Academy that my high school coach, who had been at Bracken, started that school, hired me for a year, and it was not the greatest experience. So I left and moved to St. Louis for 2 years. And I worked at a school up there and then worked for Alex Wiesel and Pierce Sweat. And kind of was my basketball grad school, worked for a really good high school coach, a guy who very easily could have fit in Hoop Dreams. Wouldn't have been he was nowhere near as like brazen with his like tactics on like, you know, kind of like getting young kids to whatever. I mean, he's just, you know, a much better guy than some of the coaches that are in this documentary, but could have fit in easily. In terms of like how just like his personality. Yeah. He's obsessed with it. So learned from him, learned from Alex, who's now, you know, a trainer that kind of does his own stuff. And he's, you know, had kind of partnered with Kobe Bryant prior to his death and was training some of his girls teams and things like that. And then works with Trae Young and Carmelo Anthony and, you know, a bunch of names, bunch of really big names. So that's kind of who I got to learn from there. And so I moved back to San Antonio and kind of brought that here. And I've been training kids here ever since, girls, boys. I have kind of a girls team that I'm working with now, train all kinds of guys. I coach a JV team at a high school here in the San Antonio area. So yeah, that was another reason, obviously, like, you know, Austin, you mentioned the bond that we had through basketball, but another reason I think why you wanted me on this one is because I do coach basketball right now currently. And you know, want to do that for, you know, the foreseeable future. And so, you know, maybe I can bring kind of a different level of, I think just a different perspective that's maybe someone who's just like watching the film as a film might not have. So, cause yeah, I mean, there's so many thoughts I have about just, I mean, we'll get into them, but the coaching aspect of this and the coaches that were in the documentary, I mean, I have a million thoughts about.
Which is why and really initially it was going to be Connor and I doing this because I wanted Connor to see this film because I think it's amazing. I think it's a total feat. It's like definitely a 5-star on Letterboxd type movie for me, and I wanted him to see it because he's my friend, and I've shown him Mind the Gap through this show. I've shown him this Netflix Undefeated documentary from 2011. Well, it's on Netflix. It's been on Netflix for years. It's not an actual Netflix doc, but that's about a football team where based around a coach who just kind of like just carries kids along and wants them to succeed so bad. And he's kind of taken a liking to these sports documentaries. He's like, it's a good vehicle to talk about life and
tell a story. Yeah.
And it's specifically American life, you know, this kind of obsession we have with sports and how much we put into it. And so I wanted to show him Hoop Dreams. He watched it. He really liked it, but he was like, I think you and your brother could do something a little bit more special here. And I agree. Love that guy to death.
Well, the initial plan was to have all three. It was going to be all three of us on. But
yes.
It was like, there actually may be some basketball stuff that, it's like, I think Connor might just be like, not boxed out, but I mean, not to, to use a basketball term, but I just like, it's like, there's going to be a different level of expertise that maybe he just doesn't have. Is that fair to say? I don't know.
Yeah. Well, yeah. At one point, Juwan Howard and Jalen Rose and Chris Webber and Dick Vitale are shown in this doc, like the ABCD camp. And it's like, those are kind of like little nuggets that if you don't know, you don't know. And that's why sports docs are so fun sometimes, is those little nuggets like, oh my God, there's Jalen. There's one of my favorite players of all time. And that's, Connor recognizes that, because I'm the same way when I watch something DC or Marvel related and I don't quite know that name drop, and he's like all over it. So it's kind of the same thing.
We're the guys in the theater who are at Spider-Man and like half the crowd is like, oh, when this person comes on the screen, I'm like, I have no idea who that is. You know what I mean? Like, that's me. Whereas like this is, you're right. This is like the converse of that, where it's like, Jalen Rose comes on the screen. I'm like, oh yeah. And it's like, he'd be like, oh, that's just another guy, just another player. It's like, player. No, it's not just another player.
They're showing him for a reason. Yeah. And this is in...
Although, are they?
What do you mean?
I mean, I guess they are showing it for a reason because like it comes out in 94 or whatever. But like,
Yeah,
but there is a time where Chris Webber is in a shot and they don't linger on him. It's like Chris Webber is like amazing. I mean,
he's the best player mentioned
of that. Yeah,
shown.
So yeah, and there are other guys that they kind of like linger on. So I actually like that they didn't like harp on like, oh, look who else was in this. Like okay. I mean, I don't know if you want to get this now, but Michael Finley was a high school senior that same year.
Okay.
As those guys at Proviso East, which is a school they mentioned at a different point in the doc.
And he goes to Wisconsin.
Yes, and ends up having great career. Yes. Obviously, a couple of times he was an all-star team on the all-star team, but yeah, so he's there at the same time. I mean, he's just like a few miles away from where these games are taking place, and probably is playing in these tournaments and playing. They probably played him at some point. So it's interesting that, but like at that point, he would not have been even drafted yet. Yeah.
Finley,
So we don't know that. So it's like, it's that knowledge of like them being the Fab Five. So it's like, what's intentional, what's not. I don't know. I really liked a lot of that stuff. But yeah, we can get into that more later about kind of like the little nuggets behind the film. But
yeah, well, yeah, I mean, so just to be clear, right now you are coaching. This is going to be your fourth year fifth year.
I've been there for 4 years. I moved back in the summer of 2018.
Okay,
so I moved back almost 4 years ago. Yeah.
Okay,
so I just finished my 4th season at Geneva.
Okay, so going into the summer and obviously into the fall and the winter will be your 5th season at Geneva,
which would be the longest I've ever stayed somewhere.
That's wild. Yeah. Okay, that went by fast.
It did.
Jeez.
It did. The pandemic kind of
and
everything.
Yeah, that makes sense. So yeah, you've kind of found this place. I've been to some of your games, that you're coaching in and assistant coaching, whatnot, and it's very clear, that this is kind of what you're supposed to do. So let's just jump right in. So this Hoop Dreams is directed by Steve James. Probably the first thing I saw him do was No Crossover, which is a 30 for 30, the Allen Iverson one. I'm trying to think. I saw Hoop Dreams sometime in middle school. I mentioned a guy named Arnold Adame earlier. He showed it to me after we watched Gunning for that number 1 spot, and he was like, "Nah, that's cute, but." Hoop Dreams is like
they're trying to accomplish very different things. But yes,
going for that number 1 spot was so dope because it's like, oh my god,
more fun.
Yeah, look, there's Kevin Love, there's Kyle Singler, there's Brandon Jennings, Tyreek Evans, Lance Stevenson, all these different dudes playing at Rucker in the Elite 24 game. But Hoop Dreams is the mecca of basketball docs. I think anyone who has seen it and has seen a bunch of other basketball docs, this is kind of the mecca. Steve James, clearly a big basketball guy.
Yes,
and he's narrating a lot of Hoop Dreams, right? Which I think is a smart choice.
Yeah.
I think we do need, because of what happened with William Gates and Arthur Agee and how they didn't become these, phenoms, you do need that someone kind of holding your hand, kind of letting you know what's happening with their family and what's going on with their playing. Like, what year is this? Are they sophomores or juniors? I don't love narrating, but when you're doing a documentary and you have 3 hours of runtime, I think it's a smart call by Steve.
Yeah. I think it's smart to not get some random celebrity to voice it too, because I think has such an intimate knowledge of these families at this point, and you can hear either him or someone else, maybe one of the other directors or producers, talking to the family occasionally, from behind the camera, or congratulating them on something, like when he signs with Marquette, and I think him knowing kind of, hey, here's where the story's going, here's where we're at this point, I think that does help push the story along, at different points where it seems like there might be a tad, because this is 3 hours. I mean, it's long. Yeah. And it's long, and I never really felt that, but it's it does need moments of just kind of pushing the story along,
Yeah. You and I definitely don't feel that because we're watching. There's a lot of basketball, a lot of basketball action, a lot of shout outs to different things happening in the basketball world in the early 90s. A lot of shout outs to the Bulls, into the Pistons, right? Isaiah Thomas is a big figure. We'll get into him soon. So for us, that's a great 3 hours. But for someone who's just watching a doc, I think Steve James made a great call in doing that. And that's Frederick Marks is the other guy who's, you can kind of hear him every now and again. They're both credited with writing a lot of that stuff, Frederick and Steve. But No Crossover is no walk in the park. That's a great doc, great 30 for 30. And what do you think the importance is of something like Hoop Dreams coming out and showing, oh my God, this can become this almost worldwide thing. It won Best Documentary at Sundance. It's up for an Oscar. And then, 14 years later, you have the rise of the 30 for 30.
Yeah.
And it becomes this thing that's still going. They're still making these ESPN films. They're not necessarily 30 for 30 because there was, obviously 30 stories. that they covered, and they did those pretty quickly. But they're still doing these documentaries on ESPN that are same quality by up and coming directors, people who have a foot in the door, and have something to say about these different stories. I think Hoop Dreams is a precursor to all of that.
Well, the 15-year thing I think is really key because so from 94 to 09, and for anyone who doesn't know what 30 for 30 is, it was ESPN commissioned 30 different filmmakers. It was at the behest of Connor Schell and Bill Simmons. They kind of came up with this idea for the 30th anniversary of ESPN, which is 1979 is when ESPN started. In 2009, they said let's commission 30 different filmmakers to make 30 films about different topics. Some could be huge things, but they kind of wanted it to be more things that like this was kind of a big deal, but it wasn't really made a big deal in the moment. So let's bring it to light or whatever.
Yes.
Some of the stuff is about like, OJ Simpson, and some of it's about, just like very small, like, stories. I'm trying to remember but they carried that brand over. And they're basically still doing them. Yeah. There's now like almost, over 100 documentaries that they've done in the last, 15 years. So that's kind of like, so that 94 to 09 period, I think what happens in like the sports kind of like world, because you hear this all the time, like is Hoop Dreams the best basketball documentary, best basketball movie? It's like they're very different things. Like Space Jam and Hoop Dreams are trying to accomplish very different things.
Correct.
So if you're ranking, which we've done before, you and I've done this before, basketball documentaries and basketball movies, they're separate categories. And Hoop Dreams is to me easily the best basketball documentary. And then the movies are the more kind of like almost
white men can't jump.
More kind of almost fun Hoosiers, that type of stuff. Like that's those are what's battling for that. Hoop Dreams is doing something way more interesting in my opinion.
Correct.
But I think that period 94 to 09, people do realize, okay, sports is a great way to kind of tell stories, and we have this great run of sports movies in the 80s and early 90s, and then there's that period where people are still trying to make them, and there's a few good ones. Miracle I think is 04, somewhere in there.
Yeah.
And I think people are realizing like, okay, sports movies don't really capture the real story that well. Sports documentaries make for a better viewing experience than sports movies. And I think you've seen since 2009 way less sports movies being made because the likes of 30 for 30 and HBO docs now and other companies have made really, really good sports documentaries. And then they're just like, hey, look, this is more interesting to just tell the story rather than make this fictionalized version of the story, which is what makes Winning Time, the HBO show, so interesting because it's like so obviously fictionalized, but or at least exaggerated. So I think that's like the timeline of like these sports stories, and I think someone like Connor is a great example of like who's just not really into sports, but can find these stories utterly compelling because they're just really human. They're very just like, man, like this person is like really striving for something or trying to get somewhere and like just can't seem to quite get there or whatever. And like that's that like kind of human spirit type stories. It's sports is like a perfect like conduit for that, So I think that's like the timeline of it and how and why Hoop Dreams is so important. And maybe it took some time to get there, but it was definitely a precursor to all the stuff that came, kind of 09 on.
Yeah, I think I've always said that Hoop Dreams does for basketball docs, sports docs, what Twin Peaks did for TV. For just it took some time, but The Sopranos is so clearly taking inspiration from Twin Peaks, even though it's years later. It's almost a decade later that it starts, right in the late 90s, and Twin Peaks is at the very beginning of the 90s. I think TV, it took a minute for it to like get around and understand what it was and what they could do with these TV shows, and now it's like, oh my God, I mean, they're everywhere you look. There's unbelievable television happening. And I think now, I think it's this exact same with Hoop Dreams.
It raised the bar.
Yeah. It's like this is the new standard. And if you really want to do something special, you kind of have to give credit to it. And I love that about Hoop Dreams. I love looking on Letterboxd and looking at different reviews of people talking about the film and what it means. And you have people who are like, I don't give a lick about basketball, but geez, this was American storytelling at its finest. Roger Ebert famously is like, this is one of the best movies of the 90s. And that's really cool. I love that about it, that it has that legacy. But when you are a Hoops fan like we are, it kind of holds an even more special place. 30 for 30, though, like maybe 2 months ago, we did Undefeated, that football doc from 2011. And I did my top 5 sports documentaries of all time. I had, of course, Hoop Dreams on there. I had The Two Escobars, which is easily my favorite original 30 for 30. And that was the perfect example of what you were talking about, where it's this massive story with these huge characters, Pablo Escobar, and Andres Escobar, and Colombian soccer in the 90s, this mecca of incredible creativity in football. And yet people didn't quite know the whole story. And that's crazy. Yeah. And then you, of course, involved, the World Cup stuff with the U.S. playing against Colombia, and he has the own goal. like it's bonkers. And of course, Pablo Escobar being who he was, in the 80s and 90s, before he passed away, uh, just it's incredible stuff. And I love that they've done that. And then, yeah, you spoke about how they do smaller, like the Run Ricky Run one is like,
Yeah.
they didn't need to make that. Pretty fucking cool, though.
No, they did. Yeah. Yeah.
Pretty fucking cool. Yeah. 30 for 30 is so important to my kind of growing as a film fan and as a documentary fan. Just the relentless storytelling. And of course, hats off to Bill Simmons, a guy we both love, the Podfather himself. He's clearly an inspiration on my life and podcasting and watching films, getting obsessed with sports and betting and all those things. I kind of feel like he's like an uncle I never really had.
That's a good way to put it. But yeah, I think the thing about documentaries too, and why I think they've grabbed, and look, I say that 94 to 09 period, it's like there were no sports documentaries in that time, but I think the movies kind of took precedent, the kind of like written, scripted films.
Yeah, and Disney,
whether they were about something real or not. Yeah, Disney
Miracle, Glory Road, those kinds of films. And then you had like the Happy Gilmores and like these kind of slapstick.
I mean, they're all
Sandlot
in that period too. They're all in that little stretch. So yeah, I think those were way more popular at that, during that stretch. Whereas now it's totally flipped in like a sports documentary. But I think the reason that is in sports, like there are things that like happen in sports that are like, well, that would like, you wouldn't even write that. Like, it's so ridiculous. Like, I mean, like the Pablo Andres Escobar thing is like a perfect example. It's like, that's such an absurd concept that like, you get laughed out of a writer's room. It's like, okay, come on, dude. Like that's too, but like it happens in sports. Like those crazy kind of stranger than fiction things happen all the time. And that's why it's such a great area to cover. Like in terms of documentaries, it's just like there's so many. I mean, obviously I'm a massive soccer fan too, and there's so many kind of soccer ones that you could
Hillsborough
go on and on about. Yeah, that are just like, wow. I mean, these are just like tragic stories. That have to revolve around a game. A game of all things. And it's like, why do we care so much about this stuff? And that's something I'm thinking about constantly. Obviously, it's my job, but yeah, I mean, yeah, we should get into like actual kind of, full on, film part of it. But yeah, I think it's such a rich place to tell stories is the kind of the sports world and everything around it too. And this one is not just like the basketball court, but everything like that is around the game of basketball, at that level for sure.
Yeah. So let's start with Arthur and Will, the two stars of the film.
So we meet them in 8th grade, basically.
Yeah,
right?
they're 14.
Or they're between 8th and 9th grade.
It seems like they're kind of these kids where are they going to go to high school, which is just such like a funny thing. But you're in Chicago. It's just how it's going to be in those major cities. We've even experienced this in San Antonio or Austin or even Bryan College Station. It's
St. Louis,
it's especially in St. Louis.
Yeah.
Oh boy, yeah. Yeah. I think St. Louis was the most interesting thing I've seen as far as high school sports in my life.
Definitely
in my life. Just the way they run things is odd. The way they kind of place teams and do tournaments.
The popularity of it.
It's bonkers. Yeah. I mean, Middle America, they really care about high school sports.
Yes.
In Texas, of course, it's dominated by football.
They really care about the football, but not everything else.
Yeah. Basketball, we've got some...
To a degree, yeah.
We have some powerhouse schools here in Texas, like Atascocita and Duncanville.
The Houston and Dallas areas, there's some pretty strong stuff. But.
Yeah. And when I lived in Houston in 2016, I sought out games. I went and saw De'Aaron Fox play for Cypress Lakes is where he went. Cy Lakes. And I went and watched him play. His teammates sucked, and he was way better than everybody on the court. And he dominated. He had a game winner. They won the game. Then I went and watched like a week later Atascocita play. I can't remember who they played. This is 6 years ago. And Carson Edwards is playing there. He, of course, went to Purdue. Of course, went to Purdue and played for the Celtics. I'm not really sure what he's up to now. I don't think he's on. I don't think he's on an NBA roster anymore. But he was okay for the Celtics there for a minute. And there's something about it that I've always kind of hated, but also like, man, I wish I could have been a part of this in some way. And I think you have to an extent. In St. Louis, I think you saw some pretty damn good talent, and you coached some pretty damn good kids who go on to play, D2 or D1 in football or basketball. And you kind of see that madness of when coaches or adults or parents are talking about them, they're talking about them like they're this animal who's about to move on. Yeah, it's insane. Yeah. And then in Hoop Dreams, it's on, 100.
Yeah.
These coaches and these adults, I can't remember the gentleman's name at the beginning of the film when he's the one who's kind of like, you should go to St. Joe's, Will, Well, he tells
Scout.
Yeah, he tells both of them. I can't remember his name.
Yeah.
But he's just like that guy sucks. Like,
okay, so he's a fascinating figure to me because he has a quote at the end, which is going to be my Tarantino spoiler alert.
Okay,
but that is just like, man, almost like heartbreaking because he's like, I think his intentions are somewhat good.
Yeah,
but how it plays out, I mean, yeah, we'll get to that at the end, but
it just looks ugly.
Yeah, but he's essentially this like freelance like talent scout, but he goes to like watch playground games of like 8th graders, really, like 8th graders, and he's just like, oh, he could play here, and like I don't really know what he gets out of it, and he says that he gets accused of all kinds of stuff, and I mean, yeah, it's just like that world is so. I mean, Hoop Dreams is the perfect title for this because it's like it gives these kids these dreams, these illusions of grandeur that they're all going to make it, that they're all going to be these stars, that they're all going to be, and it's like the odds are so heavily stacked against you. It's like, I just don't think people understand that. I mean, I have kids that I train all the time that I'm just like, man, they don't understand how hard it is to get there. Like to get to even just college, like much less like the levels that these guys are trying to get to, Will and Arthur. Like, I mean, they think they're going to play in the NBA. I mean, they genuinely think they're going to play in the NBA, and they're very good players. I mean, they're not like some of the kids I train where it's like, man, they're going to be lucky to like play varsity one day. Like, these are good players who like these schools, all these private schools, all these schools in the city, they want them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like this is not some like us, and I think that's why they're chosen, to be followed, because like, okay, there's clearly like some talent here.
Yes.
And they come from different backgrounds, interesting backgrounds, but like very similar as well. It's like there's an easy story to tell there, because of their connection and their talent and things like that, and their age.
Correct. Yeah. It's very much like the book, Play Their Hearts Out, where they follow Demetrius Walker, and it ends up being kind of a similar story where it's like, man, you put so much pressure on this kid or these kids, and you just see what fucking happens. Very, like you said, very few of them are going to actually be able to mentally get through it and physically get through it. And we'll definitely talk about,
but even more so mentally.
100%. And just the amount of games kids have to play, AAU in high school, and scrimmages, pickup games, practice. You just burn these kids out by the time they're 17. So, all right. So 1987 is when that scout gets.
That makes sense. Yeah. So right before they go into 9th grade. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah. So he successfully gets Arthur and Will interested in going to St. Joseph's.
Yeah. Which I looked up, and it's in I think, what is it called?
Westchester.
Is that the actual name of the town in Illinois?
Westchester, Illinois.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's about an hour away from where, like an hour drive, and then an hour and a half on like the little bus, like metro that they have in Chicago. I can't remember what it's called in Chicago, but so it's like an hour drive, like I guess kind of northwest of Chicago. So towards Milwaukee, really. It's like almost like halfway between Milwaukee and Chicago. So yeah, that's like where it's at. And so it's out of ways, it's like away from the city. It's not, it's in the burbs. So.
Yes. So the kids both need help. Like getting this.
It's a private school with tuition,
Yes. It's a private school, and they very much, they keep nailing that it's a predominantly white high school, where if you don't have the money to go there, you better be good at something. And that's just such that. I mean, there's so many things in this documentary that could create a whole conversation that could last for an hour. And that's kind of the fascinating thing about it, is you could rewatch it and be like, wow, this is hitting me even harder. So the coach that we meet, that's the head coach at St. Joseph High School.
Could not have looked more like a late 80s high school basketball coach.
Gene.
Like he is, and Ping is his nickname.
Yeah. Gene Ping is like what
is
a lot.
Pingator?
Pingator, yes.
Yeah, full name, yeah.
And he has, we see very clearly at one point in the doc on his license plate says Ping.
He has a vanity license plate. He's a high school basketball coach with a vanity license plate.
And the
ridiculous.
The way he carries himself, of course he has kind of the gel like slicked to the side. If you saw him in the morning before he did that routine, it'd be like Dr. Buss. At the beginning of, John C. Reilly on Winning Time, when his hair, he's bald basically. And he does all this work, so he looks a certain way, and he has these big bottle cap glasses, wears these like 3-piece suits to high school games, and just is just a jackass. Like I watching him made me just cringe so many times. And you think about how many coaches are like this out there in all sports. They just think they're the shit. And he very quickly, we learn that this is where Isaiah Thomas, one of the greatest point guards of all time, a Chicago native. He went to school there and played and won.
It was a similar story. He grew up in a super tough neighborhood and drove out, every day to St. Joe's and made it out. Not just made it out. I mean, he became,
goes to Indiana. Yeah. Goes obviously to the Pistons.
Top 30 player of all time. Yeah. So
He has that argument for sure. He is one of the best guards to ever play the game, and it, just has everything Chicago in him. He has that fight. He has that mental game, but he also was willing to like do what it took to physically get through it and like really loved the game. And we kind of learned later on with Will Gates, like he doesn't quite have that.
Yeah.
Arthur, I think, had that. I think as he got to like his senior year, he's like, I love this game, but didn't quite have the right avenue to get to the right places.
Infrastructure.
Yeah. And that's just so fascinating how the cards fall. It's like a complete alternate reality where Arthur could have been maybe Isaiah Thomas in a different scenario. But Coach Ping, he hits that so many times throughout the doc about how Isaiah went there. I coached Isaiah. They
have a cardboard cutout of him in that case. It's crazy. Yeah. I get it.
We went downstate, which I love.
Yeah, downstate.
Love that
I want to
term.
say that all the time.
Yeah.
Although it only makes sense there because where like it is, it's in Champaign, which is south of Chicago, so it makes sense. But like I can't say that here because like we'd be going upstate to
Waco or Dallas.
I just want to go downstate. Yeah.
Gotta go downstate. To where? Like Del Rio?
I'm just trying to get downstate. Yeah, Laredo.
Yeah. So awesome. And so we immediately find out, okay, this guy is he's a big deal. He's a big deal, this coach. And Arthur and Will, they kind of take these just completely different paths their freshman year, where Will quickly becomes like a starter on the team, one of the better players. And Arthur's on the freshman team, is kind of struggling, doesn't quite fit in, doesn't quite get it. And of course, made me gravitate to him right away. Arthur AG is so fascinating to me, and Will is kind of like, okay, I got this. Like, I get it. I get what I have to do around these white people. I get what I have to do to stay the course, get good grades. I'll start in these basketball games, and eventually I'll go to a college, and that's how I'll make a living.
He was clearly better prepared for that world for sure. And Arthur even says it at one point when he's a freshman. He's like, I've never been around this many white people and all this stuff. And he just didn't quite know how to handle it. Well, and I think he struggled with the grade aspect of it. You know what I mean? Like he just didn't really care that much about that part of it, and just didn't know how to make that a priority, in his life. And it's like that's just reality. That's reality for so many kids, I mean,
and there are throughout the entire world, there are kids who are going to be a little bit easier to coach, like Will Gates, who are kind of quiet. And they'll do their job. They'll play as hard as they can. They'll be one of your best players. And there's kids like Arthur who could be one of your best players, but you have to actually coach him. You have to actually meet him halfway. I think this happens to so many programs and different sports, especially in the United States, where an Arthur type kid is just not going to get a fair shot, not going to get a fair chance because the coach isn't willing to do his job. And I heard you tell me a story about some of the experiences you've had with certain kids who might be a little bit, they might mouth off or not care as much about some practice or something, but they're damn good. And if you're willing to meet them there, they might be just as good as the starters.
Yeah,
that can happen.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's happened so many times already. I mean, just in my 12, 13 years of doing this, I've seen kids just get like kind of tossed by the wayside. I mean, that maybe is a little strong. Not tossed by the wayside, but just like not given as fair of a chance because it's like, you're a little bit harder to deal with. Like, I don't feel like dealing with you, which when you are dealing with 25 people in the program and you're trying to, develop certain teams, I get that to a degree. It's like you want kind of like a no a-holes, like rule on your team. Like I understand that, but I also think like you got to at least give people chances. And like you said, meet them halfway and like hear them out, listen to them, show them that you care, and then see like, hey, now the ball's in your court. Can you kind of like rise to the occasion? And it's like sometimes the kid doesn't get the ball even put in their court. It's like it's always just kind of hit, out of bounds. And it's like it's like they don't even get a chance to play. So to continue the tennis metaphor, but it's like that's it's like heartbreaking to see. And in my world, which like let's just be honest, call it what it is. It's like a very privileged, mostly white, it's like a rich kid school. It really is. Like I don't want to like, and all the kids act like that. Like to be fair, I mean, like there's some that are very like humble and like down to earth. But it requires quite a bit of money to go there. And the majority of the kids that go there will never want for anything in their life, and it's like, so there's a different mentality than like the ones that like the kids that are in this movie, that like, it's a very, very different type of kid that I'm kind of dealing with. Now, every once in a while, someone comes through that's maybe comes from a different little walk of life. But for the most part, I'm not dealing with an Arthur Ag on my
No.
teams. But if I was, but I relish that challenge. I have had kids like that at different places I've been at, mainly in St. Louis. Not quite, to that level, but
and maybe not as good.
maybe not, definitely not as good. But but that's kind of the point. Is like I've been able to try to meet kids where they are. Again, is the kind of perfect way to put that, because I mean, how else are they gonna have a chance? I mean, it's like that's not Arthur's fault that his dad is an addict. You know what I mean? Like that's not his fault. So I have to give him every opportunity, even if there's another kid whose dad is not an addict and is totally present and is an amazing dad. It's like that's also not that kid's fault that his dad's great. It's like
correct.
It's like that's just you got to meet kids where they are.
Yeah, you got to be willing to talk to them, learn about them, and figure that out. And so as we get to the end of their freshman year, or their end of their season, basketball season, St. Joseph Varsity, William Gates, a starter. There's this segment, the sports writers on TV. I love that bit of the doc, because you have that one guy who calls him the next Isaiah Thomas.
Mm-hmm.
He said, "I think we have the next Isaiah Thomas in our hands here." It's about a decade later after Isaiah Thomas went to school there, or maybe not.
Yeah, no, that's
about right. Because how long did he play at Indiana? He went
a couple years, but he graduated in '81 from Indiana.
So yeah,
graduated, but he got drafted in '81.
Yeah, so about a decade after he attends high school at St. Joseph and wins, goes downstate and wins everything you can win.
At this time, so this is not, so their freshman year would be the 87-88 season. So,
correct.
So at this point, the Pistons had not won a title, but they're right there. They're knocking on the door.
Yes.
So they're great, and he's a big deal in Chicago, obviously, because he's from there. And so, so that's, went to Indiana for college. So,
you kind of have kids in Chicago who are Bulls fans, or they're kind of like Isaiah.
Yeah.
I kind of like the bad boys, the nasty guys down the street in Detroit. So Will Gates, I love the footage from the game where they win the sectional title, and they lose to St. Francis de Sales. I can't remember.
Yeah.
DeSalle. And they have that big white guy who's just awesome.
Yeah.
I can't remember.
That dude was a force. Yeah.
He was bloody good. And I feel like I've seen so many guys like that through just watching high school sports, who are just these fucking giants. And he's a senior, and Will Gates is this 6'1" guard who has no chance against someone like him. They lose to St. Francis. They were just the better team overall. Meanwhile, AG is on the freshman team, struggles, like we said, on and off the court, and eventually gets kicked out.
For tuition stuff.
Yes.
Not necessarily for behavioral stuff.
Yeah, no, didn't really have much to do with basketball, for sure, as we see later on. Coach Ping wanted him to stay. But Arthur's family just simply couldn't pay for anything at St. Joseph. And man, that's where another huge conversation comes into play of, what are we doing? What are we doing? Do we really want this kid to have the best opportunity that he can have? Or do you just want to kick him to the curb and be like, well, you belong here? And that's just so fucked up. And that's not just, sports or anything. That's just kind of life. That's the way we treat things in our society.
Yeah. So I thought about this part of the movie from a few different perspectives. So I worked at a school that obviously charges tuition to kids. It's not a public school, or you just go because you live close to it. So from the school's perspective, I get it, because it's okay, we can't just we don't get government money. We have no tax money coming in. We totally rely on tuition. I'm sure they have some sort of financial aid available to some, which they may be giving to these kids. If that's similar to what the situation was with the school I had in St. Louis. But they can't just let them just not pay. It's there is a line, and I think one of the guys, I think the registrar or something that kind of tries to say that. He's we can't, we do have to run a school here. If we have kids here who are using up kind of resources and things like that, they can't just pay nothing. I think if they had maybe shown hey, here's a few hundred, hey, we'll get, they may have that's usually what schools do. Is okay, if you're trying to at least come up with something, I get it. We'll try to waive some of this stuff, or we'll try to work with you a little bit. So from that perspective, I get it. It's obviously hard to see, and you want to just be well, just let him stay. This kid needs it. And it's well, yeah, but so do the other kids that go here, So it's I see that really from both sides. I think there's probably a tendency for most, viewers of a certain kind of mentality to just be oh, this is just so unfair. Classic, white school, just not letting the black kids stay. It's I actually don't know if that's really the issue here. I don't think the race part of it, it's just simply if there's a white kid who just wasn't paying, they'd be sorry, you can't keep going here. This is what it costs to go here. If you can't meet it, I'm sorry. But But then that brings up a whole other thing. It's like, well, should we have places like that? Should there be a place like that, or should it be just kind of like all welcoming? Should they get some government help so that kids like that can go to schools like that? That's a different conversation, and one that I think in another form I'd be totally like willing to have. But once the school makes a decision, this is what we're going to be. This is we're privately funded. It's a tuition school. I mean, that's just the deal. I mean, you got to pay tuition. So I kind of understand. Now, the not releasing the transcript thing, that's pretty weak.
Yeah,
they could have easily done that.
Yeah.
And the guy does make him a little bit of a deal. He's like, hey, pay a couple months and then we'll release it, and you show some good faith. And like that's like somewhat fair, but it's like that's a little cruel to not. You know what I mean? It's like you don't really need to do that. I mean, what's their worry there? I think I was trying to think about that. What's the other side of that? Because I always try to see both sides in these arguments, and it's like, I guess they could say, oh, well, then like everybody that gets kicked out, like gets the benefit of going to a school like us and getting credits here, but like doesn't have to pay for it. But it's like, I mean, that can't happen that often to make it like that big of an issue. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It is 1 year.
Yeah,
it wasn't 2 or 3 or
it's like, and how hard is it to just like send these transcripts over? It's like, what does that take? Like just putting it in.
Are they rivals with Marshall?
It's like, come on.
Yeah.
I don't know about that.
So this is really fascinating because Arthur gets kicked out because of tuition. William Gates, his family can't pay. I mean, his dad is in it for like 10 minutes at most.
Even
It's like a short scene. It's not even that long. It's maybe 5 minutes.
He's like mechanic, right?
Yeah. And it looks exactly like him. And it's like, whoa, they walk the same and everything. That was pretty crazy moment later on in the doc. But clearly he needs financial help too. So what happens, because he's really good and he's a starter on the varsity team as a freshman, which is something that only Isaiah Thomas did at the school. He gets a sponsor, and this is fascinating.
Okay, I was confused about that part because I'm not sure that was a personal sponsor. I think that was a sponsor of the school that he was allowed to use as like a tutor and as a. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I didn't. That was a little confused at that part, but the more you're talking about that Encyclopedia Britannica woman,
correct?
Yeah, I actually think she was just a partner with the school.
And it was
not him specifically.
No. That's definitely. I think that's the case. It just wasn't going to happen to Arthur because he's not a starter on the varsity team. I think I do think when you're and look, when you get really good at something, you're going to get rewarded. Whether it's I'm a really good singer.
Whether that's fair or not, that's just reality.
Yeah, I mean that's capitalism, baby. Like that's the way things work. Like if you're really,
but it also
good at
doesn't
something,
seem like they just weren't paying at all.
Yeah, I think
it doesn't seem like the Gates family at least were.
I think they were doing something, and William, like to his credit, was participating and got good grades,
going to a tutor.
They wanted he wanted to be there. He knew it was really good for him, and he knew it was the best opportunity for him to go play D1 basketball. So, and that ends up working out. So yes, he gets the sponsor, the Encyclopedia Britannica, and that lady is just like, you're a real good ball player. It's just real awkward, real awkward, and there's a moment there where it's like 7 older white people, and Will is just like, whoa, what's happening here? But he, for what it's worth, he plays along. He plays along, and he's like, hey, I'm coming back for my sophomore year. We're gonna be even better. And so he stayed.
Going downstate.
Yeah, we're going downstate this year. So he stays at St. Joseph. Again, another, he's a starter. And ends up having maybe his best year.
A great season, yeah.
His sophomore year, he's incredible. He averages like 18 points and is awesome, like the best player on the team. And Arthur goes to John Marshall. He goes to a proper Chicago public high school. Mm-hmm. That's where Patrick Beverley went, who's in the NBA now. He's a pretty good player on the Minnesota Timberwolves, and famously went there and kind of helped them get downstate, actually. And then went to Arkansas for a couple of years, and then was drafted in 2009. That's kind of their claim to fame. Coach
Beverley, I don't think he was actually drafted though, was he?
I think he was. In 2009, I think he was a 2nd round pick.
No, you might be right. Yeah,
I was looking up stuff about him. And I was like, man, he's been in the league for like 13 years.
I know,
it's crazy.
Because he played in Europe briefly.
Yes, yeah, and it was good with the Rockets, Clippers, and now he's found like a pretty nice little role with the Karl Anthony Towns, Anthony Edwards led Timberwolves, and they're knocking at the door to be in be in the playoffs. Yeah. Pretty cool. Luther Bedford, coach of John Marshall, love this guy.
Yeah,
he is awesome because
big winner in the
takes no shit, is
So honest.
Brutally honest about them. And
which kids need badly.
Yes. Yeah.
I try to do that every day. I try to just be honest. I think that's why some of the kids that I have a great relationship with and respect me, because I'm just like very honest with them. Like,
yeah.
Like I will, in front of the entire team, I'll say, this is our best player. Like, this is who we want to take the most shots. This is who we want to take the second most shots. And I think they like that there's no like BS, or I'll take a kid out for like an offense defense situation. I'll be like, he's better defensively, you're better offensively. That's why I'm doing this, and like, oh, okay. It's like you can see this like kind of light bulb go off. And I think, yeah, that was his biggest strength, was how honest he was with the kids.
Yeah. Yeah. And Arthur, he struggles his sophomore year,
big time
at Marshall.
Big time.
He one of my favorite bits is when Coach Bedford is like, look, Arthur can play for a quarter, maybe two, and then he just fizzles out. He loses like mental capacity. He starts getting hard on himself, loses confidence, and plays terrible the rest of the game, or fouls out, or does something stupid. And he's, so he benches him. He doesn't play him a lot. And it's sad. It's sad to watch, because you see this kid at the beginning who's 14, dribbling it all over the place, doing crazy stuff, and just looks like someone who's gonna like for sure be a starter at a huge public school or huge private school, whatever it may be, and go on to do better things. And you start to think. I remember the first time I watched this, I was like, "Uh-oh, is something bad about to happen to Arthur? Like, is he about to go to like a really dark place?" And I don't know how he doesn't. Through what he goes through with his dad. His dad's a crack cocaine addict. His mom kicks his dad out of the house. His name's Bo, and the mom, Sheila, God, what an angel. She's incredible. I love Sheila's story. She goes on to be a nurse and like graduates at the top of her class. It's so cool. It's such a cool storyline for her. I think she has a lot to do with Arthur's, I don't know what you'd call it, mental strength later on in the film, as a junior and senior, how he's able to kind of overcome some of those challenges. But his dad, man, tough stuff. And his dad actually passed away in 2004 at age 50. Which is not hard to believe when you watch the doc, because this is a guy who's clearly dealing with very dark things.
Wow, only 50. So he's about, he's early 30s when this movie's happening.
Yeah.
Wow, that's crazy. Yeah.
Yeah, they had him. Yeah, had Arthur very young, and yeah, it's brutal. The storyline with his family is really tough. But over at St. Joseph, like Adam said, about an hour and a half away from Chicago, from Marshall High School. Gates, again, he dominates throughout the regular season, but they get to the sectional, which is where they got past that his freshman year. They get to the sectional and they lose to Gordon Tech, which seemed like a pretty nice little team. They show a lot of highlights from that game. They seem like a pretty well coached, pretty well run team, and they lose. And this is when we get introduced properly to Curtis, Curtis Gates, William's brother, older brother, yes, yeah, by a few years, who was a high school star. They say he was uncoachable and this and that, but he just had this raw talent and wasn't really willing to listen to anyone. That's very apparent as we meet him. His attitude is terrible. He is living in the past, living vicariously through his brother, which is so sad, because William like feels that weight on his shoulders, and you can tell after the games when Curtis goes up to him and just like gives him shit. He's like, this is the last thing I need right now. And so he just kind of has his head down. He's always wearing some awesome hat, though, some corduroy Michigan or
the gear.
Yeah.
God. I can't wait.
Early 90s, man. Yeah. At one point, Arthur's wearing like a knockoff Dominique Wilkins jersey and an Indiana Hoosiers corduroy hat.
The Wilkins jersey with no name on the
back. Just 21. Yeah. We know who it is. Hawks 21. So cool. I love Arthur's room. He's got a lot of cool stuff in there. But yeah, this was to me one of the like darkest and saddest moments of the doc is kind of finding out about Curtis and his weird impact on William. And I love how the doc doesn't. They don't treat us like idiots. The audience, they kind of let that breathe, let that come into play, come to fruition, and you're like, wow, this is a big deal in William's life.
Yeah, that's where the narration could have gone wrong, because there could have been a lot more of it where he's like, now remember, like this is like, William did that, and was the brother's name?
Curtis.
Curtis, yeah, I was like Carlos for some reason. Curtis is like this, and this. It's like, no, they just show you. They just show you. We're going to keep you in this room for this thing. We're going to show you this little look this guy gives. We're going to show you the way that William kind of looks down when his brother's talking to him, but then is very excited when the brother-in-law is talking to him, who I thought was an amazing person in William's life. Like, I thought that was such a cool, like, Yeah, clearly he had a big impact on him, which is really cool to see. And he's the one that kind of really, well, we'll get to the when he gets hurt part, but
yeah, it's coming up very soon.
Yeah. So essentially they in their sophomore years, very different paths they've gone down at this point.
It seems like Arthur is,
but then here's another fork in the road in the story.
Yeah, it seems like Arthur's going to be kind of a nobody when it comes to basketball. And William has here we go. Junior year.
He's going to be a major player. Yeah.
Junior year. Here we go. It's time. It's time to really show it.
And for anyone in the kind of basketball, like, or not familiar with the basketball world, so the summer between your sophomore and junior year is usually when college coaches do the most kind of scouting. And that's when like you really kind of like cement yourself as either like D1 player, D2 player, D3. There's always gonna be late bloomers and things like that. Anthony Davis is a good example of that. But for the most part, the summer between sophomore and junior year is when it happens, and you make a big jump from either like I'm pretty good to great, or I'm just gonna be this kind of solid player. And I'm college player maybe, but like I'm a D3 level player. And I think we're about to see William kind of go on that. Like okay, here we go. Here's
yes.
Yeah, you've kind of physically developed. You've kind of know what your game is. You're used to kind of the speed of a high school game and the summer stuff. It's like here we go. Now it's time to kind of like really shine, and that's when that jump usually happens.
Yeah, and he kind of through these highlights kind of reminds me of like a Mark Aguirre, or kind of like a tough. He's built like a running back, but he's he's like 6'1", 6'2", pretty good size for a guard, but he's like relentless on the boards, and he kind of reminded me of Barkley at times. The way his jump shot, he kind of kicks his legs up.
Yeah,
it's like, man, I like this Gate. I like William Gates. I liked his game a lot. I'm much more partial to Arthur, the kind of fluid, skinny guard who's just like all over the place, stealing and going up for kind of like flare type layups.
Arthur is a much more modern looking player, the way he moves and plays. Whereas like William is such a perfect like late 80s, early 90s player.
Yes.
Like it's just, man, you look just like you could have fit in on any of these random NBA teams. He's like almost like kind of Vinnie Johnson, Mark Aguirre, kind of like
definitely,
kill you in the mid range, get some stuff around the rim, offensive rebound. Like if he's a guard, like kind of strong for a guard, it's like that's the type of game that I thought he had.
Yeah, and this is tough. Early in his junior year, he shreds his knee.
Well, it's not even the games haven't even started yet, right?
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, it's not even a proper season. And he essentially misses the entire regular season.
Yeah,
and comes back like late,
stupidly.
Stupidly. That pissed me off. Pissed me off because
that's when I started to get like angry at the characters in the movie. Not characters, the people, they're human beings.
And Coach Ping is just kind of like,
he mishandled that so bad.
Whatever. Like he's like, if he doesn't,
if you feel like you can play,
just, oh man, the stuff we do to kids, like these are huge moments in their life. It reminded me of the movie Waves, when Sterling K. Brown, as the dad, who plays a great dad, pushes his son to keep wrestling. It's like, dude, like he's gonna fuck up his shoulder for life. And this happens in real life. This happens in real life. You have adults telling you, no, like if you want to like continue on this path, you have to perform and play. And unfortunately for William, it rattles him and like completely derails what he's doing from his sophomore season to his junior season. Takes months of rehabilitation. You know what it's like to fuck up your knee. It changes who you are. Changes who you are as a player.
It does sound like though he doesn't completely tear it. It's not like a blown out. Like it's more of a kind of a partial tear. I never quite realized exactly.
He never tore a ligament.
No.
But man, when they take the cartilage out, I was like, that's disgusting.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, and I've blown out both my knees playing basketball, and thankfully I'm like, I'm okay now. I mean, it definitely affects me, but they show you the imaging like after it, and it looks like an explosion in your knee. It's so crazy.
Yeah,
it's like this
weird
pink and white, like little, like because of the blood and all this stuff, just like explosion in your knee. And it's like, yeah, it really, when they say, oh, you blow it out. I mean, the ligaments kind of just like, explode basically.
Yeah.
So I don't think he does that. It's not quite that bad, but the injury that I think he suffers, so maybe it's like a partial meniscus tear or something like that. But at 89, I guess we're in now. Like the medical advancement is just not there. I mean, that was a death sentence for some NBA players. If they tore their ACL, like it's just like, wow, there's so few guys that came back as any, Bernard King is one of the few examples that came back at that time to any sort of success afterwards.
Yeah.
I mean, some guys have just ended their career. I mean, Elgin Baylor, he ended up having some good seasons, but he was nowhere near the same player he was in the 60s, when he did it to his. So yeah, I mean, it certainly, it's not just the injury though. It didn't have to derail him, but the way he comes back was mishandled by so many people. And I can't believe, like, if that happened today, I was like, if that was one of my players, it'd be so easy for me to just be like, dude, this doesn't matter. Relax, get better. Your health matters more than this. Like these 2 random games we're gonna play at the end of the season. Like it's just not worth it. It's just not worth it. I mean, I don't know. It like made me sick watching that.
Yeah, me too. Me too. The way that storyline and the way Coach Ping treats him pre-injury to post-injury is like he's just a piece of meat.
Yep. He's not the same.
Yeah. Well, Will's not as explosive as he once was. It's like, okay. So messed up. And you can clearly tell like that brace is doing nothing. And it's really sad.
The brother-in-law, this is where I'm saying he's the one saying he shouldn't be out there. He shouldn't be out there.
I love that guy.
Yeah, no, I thought he was like great. A real positive influence.
He took him to like he took him to the Bulls doctor.
Yes.
He was like, hey, I'm going to take you
that's where it does seem like maybe through his sister, or that guy, there is more of a good base than Arthur. You know what I mean? There's someone, they're doing something right. Cause like they're like clearly like,
and he has a kid.
Yes.
And it seems like it's Alicia, the baby, really cute, really funny. Says some amazing stuff. Seems like well taken care of, like well fed and whatnot. Is not like some unhealthy little child. Seems like there's genuine care there for her, even when he's gone and playing games and doing whatnot. So, that was really interesting. The stuff with the brother-in-law, I was like, oh, can he just switch spots with Curtis?
I know.
Jesus.
Well, and there's a couple times where they're in the same kind of vicinity, and you can tell the brother-in-law's just like, God, Curtis, like,
shut up,
this is terrible. I mean, that game where he plays, I mean, he's like, well, he's out there. He has got no excuse. All this stuff.
That ain't
like,
no excuse.
The brother, it's like, dude, what? Like, what are you talking about? Yeah, like, and the brother-in-law was like, no, he shouldn't be out there. Like, this is shame on all these people, all these adults for letting him play. Like, and he's spot on. He's spot on.
It's all for money.
Yeah,
as we hear from Spike Lee later. And then Arthur also has not on court stuff happening with like an injury like that, but this is where his dad leaves the house. His dad Bo leaves the house due to drug addiction. His family has to go on welfare because it's just his mom working. And it's sad watching all of that. And Arthur, doesn't handle it very well. But this is where he kind of turns to basketball as an outlet, which you would think he would have been doing before, but it seemed like basketball was just, I'm just fucking good at this. But then he was like, no, I need this. Like, I need this thing, and I'm gonna thrive on it. And he starts to have a real season. His junior year, he becomes much better. He becomes a guy who starts on varsity at Marshall and plays a lot more. And they're not a great team, but they play a lot better than his previous seasons, and that was nice to see. Just amazing that Arthur didn't just quit basketball and be like, fuck all this and run off and do whatever in Chicago. He stuck with it, and Coach Bedford definitely is a reason why. I think
he played a huge role.
It becomes kind of a father figure for him. They upset that huge Dunbar school, the vocational school. And there were some great highlights in that game. This is where you really see Arthur kind of like steal the ball and just go the length of the court and kind of
he's so quick.
Do this like Dr. J type layup where he has the forearm band and you're like, man, this guy's badass. Yeah.
You know who he reminded me of was Penny Hardaway. The way he moves a little bit, he's not as big, he's not as tall, but there were some flashes of just like, oh, that actually kind of looked like Penny, like that was like some of the open court stuff, the quickness and those little inside out moves. And I thought that's who he reminded me of.
Yeah. So they do all right. Marshall, that junior season, they do okay. They improve greatly compared to, I think the year before they won like 6 games. They were like 6-20 or some bullshit. And they were terrible. While St. Joseph, they make it to the sectionals again. And this is demoralizing. This is where you see he comes back for that game. And starts and it's like, okay, we're gonna like really play him. We're gonna like play him into the ground. And at the end of the game, it's like a Nick Anderson moment where he gets 2 free throws, basically to
down
win.
One. Yeah,
basically to win the game.
Yeah,
and
misses them both.
Misses both.
Yeah,
and not really even close. It's
no,
like,
you can tell he's so nervous. And yeah.
And this is where you get the quote from Curtis, his brother. There's no excuse. Like he was out there, he should have made those free throws. And his brother-in-law's like, dude, like he's about to collapse. And And Gates, it starts to turn for Gates.
Well, he's like obviously limping. It's just like, man, why is he playing? Like, so ridiculous that the coach let him play. Like, that was all on the coach to me. I mean, there's a couple other people that maybe could have like helped, maybe his mom, because his mom didn't really stop him from playing.
No,
she could have done more.
She says some nasty stuff too.
Yeah.
Like as if they're both like dogs that she's raised, and she's like, one of them I thought was gonna make it. Now I'm hoping this one makes it. Like, what are you talking about?
She's got to make it.
They're not.
Yeah, like kind of looking at him as like a ticket out rather than just like her son. Like Yeah, that was weird. Yeah, her whole demeanor was strange to me.
Compared to Sheila, it's like
Sheil's a hero. American hero.
She's amazing. Yeah. So St. Joseph is knocked out again by the same school, Gordon Tech, in the sectional finals. So they make it further in his freshman year than his sophomore and junior year. Yeah. And it's like, like he's one more go around.
Which made me think that on his freshman team, the year that he was a freshman, they must have had some pretty good players because he was not like some star right away. I mean, he was good, but he wasn't like, this is just he's carrying them to you know. I think they're a pretty well balanced team, is what it sounded like. He just happened to be like a good contributor as a freshman, which seemingly was rare at that school.
Correct. So now we're in between junior and senior year, and this is crunch time.
Huge summer too. Yep.
Yeah, huge summer, and this is where we get some of my favorite shit from the doc is when they
go to the Nike camp.
Yes, they go to the Nike All-American Summer Camp at Princeton. You got Dick Vitale and Spike Lee are there, and this is where we see kind of snippets of Jalen Rose and Juwan Howard. Juwan Howard's like in the same dorm room as Gates.
So he say, "Hey mom" or something like that. Yeah.
Hey mom.
Yeah.
And Juwan Howard, of course, goes on. He's a Chicago stud. He goes on to play at Michigan with Weber and Rose and Jimmy King and Ray Jackson, and they're the Fab Five, and they go to 2 national championships in a row, 91-92 and or 92-93, lose to Duke, lose to Carolina, and those guys like all made it to the NBA. And of course, Chris Webber goes on to be
Hall of Famer.
Fucking Chris Webber. Yeah. And Jalen Rose is now one of the premier voices in basketball analytics, you know, and
basketball media.
Yeah. And Juwan Howard coaches Michigan. Yeah. So, these guys are a good deal. And of course the Fab Five ESPN documentary is an absolute must see. I think it's a great kind of double feature. I think it's a good double feature with something like Hoop Dreams. If you have 5 hours.
Yeah.
So at this camp,
Fab Five is actually kind of short, but anyway,
it's like an hour and a half.
Yeah,
maybe a little shorter. Even, I remember watching it on TV and it had like that 2 hour window. 7 to 9, here we go. Well, I remember watching those 30 for 30s and those ESPN films like when they came out that night. And now I'm like, whatever. I'll record it and watch it when I can.
Or we paid $4 a month or $5 a month for ESPN Plus.
ESPN Plus,
and they're all there. Yeah, all the time. We have access to them all the time.
And you have Basketball Love Story, 20 hours of 20 hours of basketball stuff. So at this camp, and they're wearing those jerseys, the ABCD, and it has the basketball with the pencil.
Yeah,
I want one of those real bad. It's like a penny that they wear for their scrimmages and stuff. And Gates is like highly recruited still. It's like this guy's good. And you see Coach K, you see John Thompson,
young Coach K.
Yeah, crazy. Weird. Who else was there?
Bob Knight, Rick.
Bob Knight has a great little bit. That quote's really good. About how young kids, no matter what level they're at, just
even some NBA players, don't understand what basketball is all about. Yeah,
so good. Love Bob Knight. But yeah, seeing Coach K, especially because he just finished his last season at Duke, seeing him 25 plus years ago. At this point, he's only been coaching for 14 years at Duke, or not even. When the movie comes out, it's 14 years. In the actual this moment at the camp, it's it's like a decade. So really neat to see that stuff. This is where I think being a basketball fan, you just get that kind of like jolt of fuck yeah, like seeing these faces and where they're at in this camp is really special.
Yeah. So the coach the coach stuff was hilarious, and Dick Vitale and his like ridiculous outfit, shorts, like talking to him, just classic like old basketball coach look, but the Coach Steve look, I should call it, from Big Mouth, but the coach that is like really on, and he'd been on Gates early, is the Marquette head coach at the time was Kevin O'Neal.
Yes.
So we actually get a lot of him in throughout the whole thing. I mean, it's just like very like kind of nerdy looking dude, going in. I love the home visit that he did with them, like where you get a sense of like this is what it's like to kind of pitch to a family and all that stuff. It's like that's a very like intimate look at what that's like, and the assistant coach is on him. The assistant coach is kind of like clearly the guy that's like kind of the go between like the black community and the white community. It's like that's like every staff has to have a player like that. Yeah. Yes. Every staff has to have that guy. I mean, it's just a necessity. So, but they're making it really obvious to him that, hey, you will be a priority. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, you come here, you will be a priority.
And shortly after returning home from the camp, he signs letter of intent with Marquette, and is like ahead of his senior season. Is I want to play at Marquette. This is what I want to do. And yeah, I loved when Coach O'Neill was like, "Now we want to win national championships, and we want to get you prepared for the next level."
Yeah.
Okay, sure.
That didn't quite happen.
Yeah. Thanks, Kev. Yeah, but Marquette, man, I mean, they've had, fucking Dwayne Wade and some guys I love, Jimmy Butler, Jay Crowder, some guys I really dig. Dwayne Wade's at the top of that list, but Will Gates is a Marquette alumni. That's pretty cool. He ended up. They say in the credits where he ends up going afterwards. I guess we'll probably get to that at the end. I think that there's gonna be something about that. Okay, so Gates, while he does well in school, seems to struggle with the ACT a lot.
Yeah.
Takes it like 6 times. And you had to get an 18.
A composite score. Yeah.
Yeah, of 18 to get into Marquette. And he keeps getting 15 or 16. And that was like, oh my God, like, just let him go there, damn it. I get it. You want to have some sort of, standard for academics, and every school is like, look, now your education is the most important thing, which is bullshit. Like, we know that, especially for sports. There's guys who don't even go to class, especially nowadays. So I just thought that was so interesting how he seemed to do pretty well and get, mostly B's, some A's in actual class, but this ACT, there was like so much pressure on him to get a certain score. And it reminds you of what happens to him on the court when there's like that much pressure, like will doesn't rise. And I thought that was really fascinating how those translated. The ACT was like the sectional game. I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah.
I think that happens to a lot of high school kids. Shit, it happened to me. I would get so nervous before basketball games where I knew I needed to play well. And then I would get really nervous for something like an ACT where I'm thinking about like, whoa, this is going to be something that's affecting me when I'm 20, 21, 22, graduating from whatever school that they think I should go to. Like, kind of mind-boggling stuff when you're a teenager just trying to fucking talk to girls and, eat burgers and pizza, like it's just this wild kind of life-altering thing that happens in between all of that. It's kind of scary.
It is. And it's the part of, oh man, I'm trying to think of how much to get into this, but it's a part of like what I do. It's so I coach a team, but I also like, I use the school that I coach at as like part of the reason I've stayed there, and because I love the kids, but also like it does get me a gym for when I want to work with kids from other schools or whatever. It gets me a place to like train kids. And so I do a lot of like one-on-one training, group training, things like that. And a lot of the one-on-one settings, I get to know the kids like pretty intimately. I mean, like, you're with them just for like an hour and a half, like just the two of you, and you're just talking. And I'm trying to get these kids to open up. Like, I don't want it to just be this like boring hour for them, And there are definitely a few kids that I've talked to that I've worked with that like absolutely love it, and they like can't wait for the workout, and like because it's a combination of they love basketball, they like working out with me, and it's like this is a chance to get better, all this stuff. And then there's some that's like, man, this is clearly dad pushing this or mom pushing this, and I then feel like it's my duty to just be like, okay, this isn't necessarily what I want to be right now, but I'm at least gonna make this as enjoyable as possible for them, because like this is like a pressure filled thing that they have to do, this basketball thing.
Yeah.
And then there's the rare people, which I would say 2 girls right now, that are like have like all of the pieces of the kind of like what it takes to get to the highest level. I mean, one of them has a bunch of D1 offers already. She's sophomore right now, and there are times where it's like, man, I kind of wish she could just be like a 16-year-old girl. But I also like the fact that she wants this makes it easier for me to be like, okay, no, like she actually wants this stuff. She wants the extra work. She comes, voluntarily to like our boys' open gyms because she's like, I just want to keep playing. And there's a clear love there. Like that's like, okay, I'm gonna keep fostering that,
feeding
like,
that,
kind of with her parents. I'm gonna kind of like help like keep pushing her because she can handle it. You know what I mean? But then there are other kids I work with that's like that's not they're not that driven. They're not that driven, and they're not lesser people. They're just not as driven in the game of basketball as this one girl is. And so I don't know. I see kind of like all these different sides, and like some of these people who make it and some of them who don't. It just comes down to, did the right person come along in their life at the right time to kind of like either push them or not push them, because like some people, the the expectations and the pressure breaks them, and they go to a much darker place than they would have gone. Then if a coach at some point in their life could have just been like, "Hey, it's okay. This isn't that big of a deal to you. Like, it's okay. Keep playing because you love it, and it's like you help the team, and it's all that stuff. Like, that's fine. But if you don't want to like work every single day and like become like a D1 player, that's okay. It's okay. Just play and like let's enjoy other things and let's make you as good of a person as you possibly can be, and that's it." And so there are some kids that I just do that with. There's kids that I work out with, and I'm like, "Why exactly are you paying for training? Like, you don't even like really like this that much." But I think they're just kind of like, I just want to be as good in high school as I can, and I like working with you, and like that's it. And I'm like, okay, that's good enough for me. That's fine. All good. I mean, I worked with a kid today who's awesome. He was on my JV team, really like just a great kid. But he's like definitely not a college player. Like, I mean, there's just so it's like he just wants to get better because he's like, I enjoy basketball when I'm better. Like, I want to play more. I want to like get on the court more. It's like I don't want to, because he would ask me after games like, what do I need to do to get better? I was like, you need to work on this, this, and this. And so he's like, okay. And then like the season ended, he's like, I want to go work on those things with you. And I was like, all right, cool, let's do it. So
that's great.
Yeah, it's like that's why I do it, because it's like there's just him who's he might even be a college football player because that's kind of his goal. But in basketball, he was just like, I'm tired of just like not getting as many minutes as I think I can eventually earn. He's like, I don't think I deserve more, because he's like, but I need to get better so that there's no reason for you to take me off the court. I was like, that's an amazing attitude.
That's great.
But it's also not like a total flaw if someone's like, no, I just play basketball because I like it. It's just fun.
Yeah.
I like hanging out with my friends during basketball season.
Straight up.
That's okay too,
Yeah, both things, it's not like there's just two avenues. There's every avenue can be something beautiful.
Yes.
If you're LeBron James and you're like, you breathe, you shit that stuff. You're like, this is what I do. Yeah. I'm going to get better every single day. That's great. I don't have an ounce of that in my being. I'm far too eclectic. One of my favorite scouting reports on any player ever is Mo Bamba, who plays for the Magic and went to Texas. And they said that I don't think he's going to make it in the long run because he has too many eclectic hobbies.
Yeah,
interests.
Yeah.
And I remember hearing him say that on The Shop, that HBO show, and he was like, "What? Like, because I care about other things other than basketball? That's just the nature of it. That's how people treat it. It's like, oh, you're not going to be this workhorse who just cares about this one thing. Like, you also want to be good at 2K.
Yeah.
You also want to be good at painting.
Or like learning instruments.
Yeah. You want to play piano? Like, shame on you, And that's why right now one of my favorite players in the entire world is Jaylen Brown, because Jaylen Brown makes music. He does all kinds of, volunteer work or
charity work. Yeah.
Yeah. He does Black Lives Matter stuff. He cares about his hometown city of Atlanta. He cares about the kids that go to Cal, which is where he went to school. He cares about the people of Boston changing their ways and not being like borderline racist. And that's great. That's wonderful. I don't see how you can't appreciate both things. And this comes back to not just William and Arthur. It's like you're speaking about the kids that you've experienced this with, is you gotta like take time to get to know them. You gotta take time to, what do you want out of this? Like, no, that doesn't get asked, especially in this doc. Never gets asked. So what do you want?
That's funny that you said that question, because I like to do that when I first start working with kids, like, because what happens the way this happens is like, okay, I've worked with this person. They go play in a tournament. Someone's talking to their parents, like, oh, like this person's like playing pretty well. Like, who do they work with? And then the parent can be like, oh, this guy, or that's how I've gotten a lot of stuff like recently. And so then the parent will call me and be like, oh, I heard you do this. Like, would you be willing to work with my daughter or son? And then it's like, here's what they're like. Here's what they're like. And I listen before I even meet the kid. I hear so much about the kid from the parent. So then finally, when the workout actually starts and the parent like walks away and goes to the bench, I say, okay, what do you want out of this? Like, like they've told me everything. Like, they've told me all this stuff. They told me about you. They tell me, but like, I care, but like, you're the one doing the workout. Like, you're the one that's going to be doing this. Like, what do you, and some of them, they like love it. They're like, oh yeah, here's this. And they have like a prepared thing. And then some of them like are surprised because like nobody ever asked them that, they're just like, oh, I've never really thought about it that way. It's like, well, yeah, but like, it's your like career. It's like your basketball, like life. Like, what do you want out of this? And so they're like, what do you want to get better at? They've told me like, oh, I think she needs to work on this, or I think he needs to do this, this, and this. And it's like, what do you think you need to get better at? Where do you feel uncomfortable in the game? And you can tell there's just like this instant, like, oh, cool. Like, and then hopefully like a relationship builds from that. You know what I mean? So, that it's funny that you said that question, because I always end up asking that. I always wait till the parent's gone though. Cause it's like, I don't want them to be like, oh, well, I think, like interject. It's like, no, I actually want to hear from them.
Now, like, Timothy. Yeah.
Like, I actually want to hear from the kid themselves. Yeah. Like, what do they want?
The goal is D1. The ceiling is D1. The floor is D2. Shut up. It's ultimately up to the individual that's going to be in play, even if they're not the ones paying for it. They're the ones taking that action. and that's huge. Yeah, I've watched you do workouts before, and I've seen. I won't say any names, but I've seen the difference in someone who's damn good and wants to be damn good, and if they mess up a drill, they throw the ball at the wall and they're fucking pissed.
Mm-hmm.
And I've seen a kid who's just like, that was fun.
Yeah.
That was tight. I took 33s. Yeah, that's dope. Like, that's cool. And I talked to a guy who knows a lot about basketball for an hour. Like, that's great. And then we went to get some burgers after and whatever. And we played 2K or whatever it is. Like, that's great. But I've seen the difference. They're both equally fascinating to me. Yeah. And they're both worth that time. Kids are always worth that time. For sure, 100%. That's great. I knew at some point we kind of go down this road of like what is the point of teaching a kid something, coaching a kid something, and just kind of the philosophy of it, which is so interesting. Especially,
what's the point of playing sports?
Yeah.
I mean, I think about that all the time.
Like,
is this just like so stupid that we're doing this? You know what I mean? Like, there's times where like, why am I doing this? Why am I driving, up here to work with this kid for an hour and a half when it's like they're not even that great? It's like no, but like there's such value in just like the human connection of like what we're doing, and then also like we're not on our phones for an hour and a half. And,
that's
like,
great.
It's just away, and we're just talking
being
and working
active,
on something. Yes. And it's like that. There's value in that, and then there's also value in just like. Because I think there's a fine line. We were talking earlier. It's like I don't think it's a character flaw that someone's like, "Hey, I actually don't want to pour like all that time into basketball." But there's also a fine line between that and then laziness. Like,
oh yeah,
you know what I mean?
Yeah,
I actually do care about this, and I'm just like, I'm lazy. I don't want to put in the work for that right now. You know what I mean? That's different than like, oh, actually, just like I like other things. Like I like other things. I'm gonna pour my time into these other things. That's where I think it's like not a flaw. But where I think it's a flaw is like, I'm not gonna pour my time into anything. I'm just gonna sit around. Like that's when it can turn into okay. That's now not like. Oh, I just like other things. You're just being lazy. You know what I mean?
Correct.
So there is a fine line in that. And I hope that comes across. I don't want it to make it sound like, oh, anybody who just like decides
do
not to
whatever
work
you
hard.
want.
Yeah. It's like, no. You need to work hard on things. Like, but it doesn't have to be like basketball is like my point when I, tell some kids, but like, or it doesn't have to be sports in general, just at all. It's just like whatever you decide to work hard at that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or if you want to work pretty hard at a bunch of different things and like have all these different interests, that's cool too, but don't just do nothing, don't just do nothing. So, but the value of it is the like, hopefully, lessons I take from like just these like little workouts or team and stuff that I do into like other parts of life. And it's an avenue kids want to be there, right? Like an English teacher has a little bit harder time connecting to kids. And that's why like a coach has such an easier leg up because they've signed up to play basketball. They didn't sign up to go to English class. They have to go to English class.
Correct.
So like they have a harder task, like trying to get kids to like buy in and develop and like, just communicate with them. Whereas like I have such a leg up as a coach because like they actually want to be here. This is,
yes.
Sometimes there's kids who are like, I don't think they really want to be here. Dad wants them to be here. But when you sign up for a team, usually it's like you do want to play.
Yeah, it's 9.5 times out of 10. It's more fun than English class.
Yes.
I love a good
discussion about literature.
A good teacher. A good teacher can change everything. I feel like I didn't have nearly enough of them growing up. I just don't think they're cared about enough or paid enough to care themselves. I think a lot of coaches and teachers, if you gave them more, they'll give you more. That kind of thing.
For sure.
So it's very, very, very simple. You give the Coach Pings of the world everything they want, but there's other coaches out there who are probably trying a little harder.
Coach Ping.
Yeah, Coach Ping.
Pinger.
But let's get back to Coach Ping in St. Joseph.
Yeah, we can continue with the movie. I know there's so many different branches.
We're almost to the end here.
Yeah.
We're almost to the end. We're going into their senior season. So just to briefly recap. So they go to the camp. William Gates goes to the camp, right? And Marquette, he
eventually does sign with Marquette.
He's basically signed with him.
Yeah.
While Arthur has like junior colleges after him. Like, oh, this guy could be like a huge piece on our team at a small school.
Arthur is not at the camp.
No, he's not.
He does not go.
No.
It's invite only, and Arthur is not getting invited.
Well, yeah, and he doesn't have a good enough season.
Yeah.
But his senior season,
yes.
Oh boy, this is the best.
Dude goes off. Yeah.
This is the most chilling part of like.
Yeah.
This is the sports part, like the comeback, comeback season for Arthur. So they both play. Gates senior year, St. Joseph season. They like losing the second round of the playoffs to this cool school called Nazareth Academy. This just machine. They look like a well-oiled machine, honestly.
Man, that place was packed.
Yeah,
there were so many fans there.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I love that. I thought it was interesting how Kevin O'Neill, the Marquette coach, is like, "You ready to play in front of 15,000?" It's like, I have.
Yeah.
I have it. I had high school games where everybody's screaming and parents are get my kid back in the game, Yost. Doing that whole bit. When they lose to Nazareth, Arthur's there. He's at that game, and he's in street clothes. He's watching because his Marshall team is also in the playoffs, playing in a different section because they're a public school, and they hug after that. Like they embrace. They've clearly remembered each other from their freshman year playing at St. Joseph together, and they've clearly connected on a personal level since then. Throughout their 4 years of high school. That was a really sweet moment.
It was.
Them two hugging, and they tell each other they're like, I love you, man. I love you too.
Yeah.
And he's like, man, I wanted this so bad. Will Gates is like, I wanted to win so bad, and Arthur's like, that's what I'm going to try to do.
Yeah.
It's like,
I almost started crying when that happened because it was like Arthur had rediscovered that like love, and it was like, hey, this was this thing that we bonded over, and like I think Arthur was almost trying to tell him like, I'll get you, man. I'm still going for this. Like this, like that was, there was something about that moment that was just like so beautiful. These two kids who were like kind of ripped from like their like base or whatever, and like willing. I mean, it wasn't like they just like, oh no, I don't want to go to St. Joe's. Like it was an honor to go to St. Joe's, right? Like they don't just take anyone, So
it's where Coach Ping's at.
Yeah, the legendary Coach Ping. So like that, clearly like that's a draw. They want to go there, and like for one of them it works out, for one of them it doesn't. But in this other route of life, like Arthur has found success and found like a good niche and has rediscovered this love of basketball, this thing that they bonded over all those years earlier. And now it's like Arthur's turn to be like, no, I'll carry it on. I'll take this load.
Yeah.
I'll keep going. And he does. And he lights it up in the playoffs and they go on this like miracle run. It's awesome.
This crazy public school run where they're basically the underdog in every matchup is what we're told. And Arthur is just, man, I could watch him play in those games where he just gets amped after every play, like he's Russell Westbrook from 2016-17, just freaking out over anything he does. Really cool, really inspiring. And they go on this insane run. They go to the Final Four. They go downstate. Marshall goes downstate for the first time in like 20 years or something.
Yeah, I think it was 1960. So I'm 30 years.
30 plus years. And they go downstate. Thanks to Coach Luther. And of course Arthur's great play. And they also have another guard who seemingly was like also awesome. They have like
and they keep talking about like their team speed and their press and all that stuff. And it's like, so clearly that, this is not just like some chumps around it. Like these are good players probably.
Like, and Coach Bedford, I would love in those games, those playoff games. Anytime they'd have like adversity, he'd be like, you guys are playing soft.
Yeah.
You're playing lazy. Like you gotta be creative. You gotta go fast. Like if you play quick at this level, like you can beat anybody because of the amount of time that's played in a high school game, and just the mentality of high schoolers is like, if you punch them in the mouth, chances are you're gonna have a shot. I see you have the Broadley Center up here.
Yeah. Part of this because he talked about Kevin O'Neill, the marketing coach. Like,
what is the capacity?
It had just opened, so it's 18,000. I mean,
okay,
and it's where the Bucks eventually play and Marquette plays.
So how many people do you think are at the high school game? There's got to be
8,000. A smaller gym. No, I wouldn't say that many.
I
mean, it's a little bit of a smaller gym. At that point, the Nazareth one, they hadn't gone. It wasn't like at a neutral place.
That's right.
It was just like at a high school.
So I'd
say two or 3,000.
But probably the Final Four game that Arthur plays in, there's got to be like 8.
Yeah, 8 or 9. Yeah.
So cool. Yeah. Can you imagine?
Yeah.
17. These people just screaming.
Yeah.
And so they go on. They play this huge school, Manual High School, who just was a freakishly good team. And John Marshall, they give their best shot. Arthur plays good. He has some turnovers though, and they're definitely fatigued. He mentions at one point they played 5 games in 6 days.
Yeah,
you're like, holy shit.
So it must have been the type of tournament where it's like 2 games off, 2 games. You know what I mean? It's like they just play the next day. Which I to me, states that do that, and Texas does it for the very end, the Final Four. Like that doesn't create the best like play, and you're getting these, and that's probably why they were able to upset teams, because they play a style that you needed to practice for, be used to. You know what I mean? So it probably helped them to go on that
kind of like St. Peter's in the tournament.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I played this style. It's like, oh man, if you had a couple of days to prepare, you could beat this team. But if not, then you might be screwed. So yeah, I mean, that plays into their hands.
Yeah. No, it's beautiful, because then at that game, Will is there and they hug again after the game.
Yeah.
So they both like greet each other, and this is where, if you're a cinema lover or you documentary lover, movie lover, this is like, wow. I mean, this is sweeter than all the Avengers coming together, or whatever, whatever moment, or Red and Andy coming together in Shawshank at the end. It's like this is real life.
Yeah, this actually happened. Yeah,
this is real fucking life. They're capturing this in real time, and it is a beautiful moment of these two guys coming together. Again, saying like, "I love you, man." Like you played great, you gave it your all. Like hopefully we can continue this.
Yeah,
and the movie starts coming to an end. We see little bits here and there. You see Will with his daughter, and then you see him go to Marquette, and he's in his dorm. You see Arthur go to the school in Missouri,
Mississippi, Southern Mississippi,
Missouri, Mineral Area College in Missouri.
Oh, it was Missouri, yeah, Southern Missouri, yeah.
And they play that like country music when he goes there, and he's one of 7 black kids. In the school.
Well, they're like all on the basketball team.
Yeah.
Because like his dorm is like 4. Yeah.
6 of them live in the same house.
Yeah.
I was like, oh my God. And Arthur's, of course, one of them. They show like Arthur and his buddies are like, they're like cutting each other's hair.
How about the coach, the mustachioed coach with the "Just Undo It" poster of the girl in the bikini? It's like, what?
Incredible.
Who is this guy?
I loved with that head coach when he goes to Arthur's house, the AG's house.
They're like not sold.
Oh no, Bo's like, no, if you want. And Arthur's like, I just want to play. I don't really give a shit. I really don't care.
I'll just sign it. Yeah.
the coach says, let's do it up.
Yeah.
I love that line.
Well, I think the coach knows I'm getting the steal here. You know,
like I'm getting my best player.
Yes.
and he plays there. We see in the credits that William plays at Marquette. Doesn't play like a whole lot or anything. He's not like a standout, and starts to lose interest in basketball as he's at Marquette. And Arthur Agee goes on to play at, I believe, Arkansas State University.
Yep.
And is like a starting point guard there. So pretty amazing how this documentary over time, you think William, this is the guy, he's going to NBA, or he's going to go to Indiana or something, or a powerhouse school. He goes to Marquette, good school, but then just kind of loses that passion that he had, that pure drive that people were kind of forcing on him, pressuring him to have throughout high school, and that's it. Marquette's it for him. And at the end, it's 1994, so they're still in school, and they say Arthur Agee like still wants to play in the NBA. Like he still has that burning desire to just play. I just want to play. I want to play the highest level, whatever level I can get in at. He's down, and I love that about him. I love during his senior year when he's getting interviewed, and he's like, the way I play, I think the way we play as Marshall and the way I play, it's kind of like on any given day, we can kind of beat anybody.
Yeah.
I love that just kind of mindless, thoughtless part of athletes where it's
that
like,
confidence. Yeah.
Yeah. Where it's this like unrelenting, I'll always just show up.
Yeah.
And kind of go at people. That's something I also like never quite had. Even when I played, I was a decent player in high school, but I never had that just fuck it. I don't really care. I was always the guy who was like, now this guy on this team is really good, and this guard and this forward, like they're the best players. Arthur's like, I don't care.
Yeah.
give me the damn ball. You know? And I love that about certain athletes who just don't give a shit. On any given day, I can show up and be the best player.
Yeah. And so the more I kind of think about their two paths and kind of the road they go down, I think that lack of like intense pressure in Arthur's kind of middle part of high school is what led to him continuing to love it beyond high school. You know what I mean? Whereas like William is like, yeah, I'm done. I mean,
he got to find it himself.
Yes.
Arthur.
Like, oh yeah, I actually do love this. Like not everybody around me, I love this. You know what I mean? And like, and that's cool. I'm going to chase this again. Whereas like William is just like, oh, this is everything I have to deal with. Like I think he loved like the game of basketball, like playing in a game of basketball. But I think he was like all the stuff around it. Yeah. Miss me with that. I'm sick of that. So it just kind of like, and I think that's why so many people lose their love of it. I mean, this kid I worked with in St. Louis for a while who just finished his college career, and he's like, by the end, I was just kind of like, just ready for it to be done. It's like, he's like, I love basketball and I love it. I'm glad I played, but he's like, it's just kind of because of the coaching stuff and some of the politics and all. He's like, I just kind of was like, he's like, I love my teammates. Bus rides are fun. Locker room's fun. Yeah. He's like, but I don't know, everything around it. He's like, I'm glad I'm done. Type thing. It's like, man, that's a bummer.
That's wild.
But that's why I think like my kind of bottomless passion comes from maybe the fact that I didn't play in college. You know what I mean? It's like maybe that would have been kind of like pounded out of me. And it's like, no, I still just love it like a fan. Like I still buy jerseys and I still go to games. And I'm excited to, go watch random high school games and go to watch college games and, go to NBA games. Like I still love it. I just love it. So I think that played a big role. I mean, it's like there is this point where it can just be too much.
Yeah.
And I think it happens really to girls more than boys. And like the more I coach girls, and like some of these girls by the time they're done, even their senior year of high school, they're just like, yeah, I'm done with this. Like
this is insane.
Just kind of tired of this. Yeah. So I don't know.
And it happens in all sports, you know.
Oh yeah.
We just saw the best female tennis player in the world retire at age 25. She's like, I've given everything I have since I was like 11.
Yeah.
I think I've had a full career already, and you're 25, and people will kind of bash her, and I'm totally against that. I'm more like, no, I understand, especially with something like tennis. You play from a very early age.
Well, that's so singular.
Yeah,
you're just by yourself.
Yes,
and
it's a solitary sport where
like that's what like that one player told me recently is like. At least, I mean, he had teammates. At least he's like, I have the locker room. I have the, you know what I mean? It's
bus
like,
rights, yeah.
Yes. It's like, I still have that.
Oh, I think about that stuff all the time. The camaraderie.
Well, that's what I still get. I love it.
And that's what I try to tell kids who are in high school. If they play something, like, hold on to it.
Yeah.
Because it will be gone. It will be gone.
Oh, yeah.
And it'll be gone
quicker than you
fast.
realize.
Yeah. 4 years is very quick, with anything, my daughter's 3, and it's like that's gone by very fast.
Yeah,
went by just as fast as 3 years of high school. It's a blink of an eye type thing, and you do have to cherish it. But when these credits roll and Hoop Dreams ends, you're 3 hours in, and you're like, wow,
yeah,
kind of wiping the tears.
Yeah,
you just feel like you've seen humanity in all forms.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the power of it. I can understand why someone would be. Like it's almost too much information. There's almost too much, societal studies, too many things to kind of dissect to where it's overwhelming. I get that, and I think we've talked a lot about different stuff, especially involving basketball, here on this episode. But man, that's why I love it, because it's everything everywhere all at once.
It has all these tentacles that it could go even deeper. I mean, really. I know, it's a movie podcast, I don't want, but it could so easily be a like 12-part documentary. You know what I mean? Like where it's almost a show. I mean, it's like
now,
yes,
that's what would happen.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Now it would be like OJ Made in America. It'd be like a 5-part, 2 hours each. It'd be a 10-hour full on.
Let's use this to tell the intersection of like, well, and I mean, the history of the NBA. I mean, just in that little period, the amount of things that happen in the NBA is like, it's crazy the amount of stuff that happens in that little 4-year period that they tell this story in. Like, I mean, or really, if you expand it out to 94 when it actually comes out,
87 to 94.
I mean,
oh my gosh,
a quantum leap in the popularity of the NBA. Like, like it's really, it's remarkable. The levels that it's taken to in that little stretch there. And that's all happening as these guys are. I mean, you see the gear, you see that, and college basketball too. It's like it's just exploding the popularity of basketball in that little stretch, and so that's a little tentacle you can go down. And then the socioeconomic stuff, and I mean, what's fair, what's not. How do we handle addiction? How do we talk about how do we talk about people who've been disappointed, like the older brother, and like I mean, there's so many things you can just discuss, like branch off of the main story, and that's again, why it's so good. I mean, it's such a compelling story. I mean, and one that's so what maybe the most sad, I guess I'll say, is how common it still is. You know what I mean?
It's still applicable right now,
and will be for the foreseeable future.
Who knows?
It's I mean, so many of the parts that are like kind of a bummer are just like still happening all the time.
Still a bummer today.
Yeah. I mean, the scene. I mean, we can talk about kind of maybe some best and worst type scene type stuff. I know you guys have categories, so we'll get to. But the scene when Arthur is playing basketball, he's younger. And he's basically watching his dad buy drugs on that corner, kind of away from the hoop. And it's like his body language, his body just like kind of shuts down. Like he just kind of dies. Why? He's just like, oh, like he's really doing that like right now. Like he's like, maybe I kind of knew, but I could kind of like pretend like I didn't know because it's like it's happening away from me. Yep. He's like, now I have to confront this. Like, and I'm 15 or however old. It's like, oh my god, that was like brutal to watch.
Shattering.
Like just so hard. And his dad just doesn't care. Just doesn't, like he couldn't even go around the corner of the building to where it's like, well, at least don't do it right in front of your son. It's like, man, I mean, but that's also just like, that's how addiction grips you. But his arc is fascinating.
Bo's?
Yes.
It is. Yeah. Bo and Sheila could have their own fucking documentary.
Easily.
It's nuts. Coach Ping could have his own documentary.
Yeah.
Coach Ping.
The Scout.
Oh yeah. The Scout. coming back around. Yeah, I think you're gonna be bringing that up later.
Yeah.
God, yeah. This is Hoop Dreams is amazing. So I'm sure you've logged it on Letterboxd. Is it a
5?
Yeah, 5 stars.
And I don't have many 5 stars.
No, I know.
I'm a little stingier with it than most people, but and I don't have nearly as many films as you do. So like, I guess the numbers, maybe the raw numbers aren't high, but I would guess that your percentage of movies that are 5 stars is higher than mine.
I've got a little over 100 out of like 2,500.
Oh yeah, yours is way higher. Yeah, because I have about 1,300 movies logged, I think, or maybe 1,200 movies logged, and I have like 25.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So yeah, quite a bit.
Yeah.
Quite a bit more.
Yeah. I definitely give them out. I'm. You've always known I'm very easily floored by stuff, by movies mostly, and music. Like we just saw last night, Everything Everywhere All at Once. Give it 4.5.
I did too.
Thought it was really good, but on a second viewing, I could see it moving up. I thought it was just one of the most unusual and amazing things.
I would like to watch this again.
Seeing? Yeah. I mean, it was so silly at times, but it made me cry at the end. I felt so many emotions, and I was so entertained.
I told Caitlin that I didn't think I was going to laugh that much. I didn't know it was going to be that funny. You know what I mean?
Me neither. I didn't know. I didn't know a lot of stuff was going to happen. I knew Jamie Lee Curtis was a producer and she was in it. I didn't know she was going to be in it that much. I didn't know she was going to have hot dog fingers.
Yeah.
So yeah, go see that movie if you can.
I'm sure y'all talk about that.
Yeah. On tomorrow's sneak preview, Connor's going to mention it. Caleb, who's going to be on that episode, he lives in Virginia and it's not showing there, so only Connor can see it.
Yeah.
Luckily, there are some places in Texas, San Antonio, Dallas, Houston, Austin, of course, that still show movies like that. We have a lot of theaters in Texas, and we still get movies like that. So, but there are states out there that just won't be able to see it, and that's so sad to me. I hate when that happens to me. I know that's not an easy feeling, but if you can go check that movie out, it's fantastic. But yeah, I'm in the same boat. It's a 5-star movie, Hoop Dreams.
Yeah, I agree. You want to get to the categories?
Yeah. Well, briefly, I want to look at the 67th Academy Awards. This is I mentioned at the beginning of the show. This is where Forrest Gump kind of dominates. Not really my kind of film, but it's fine. It's entertaining. I just think there's some better stuff that came out that year. At this ceremony, Hoop Dreams famously not nominated for Best Documentary. The reason for that, there's like a big controversy around it. It kind of changed the category forever because Hoop Dreams was like, what? How is this not just winning Best Doc? Is the way they would. This isn't still to this day, but at this time in the 90s, mostly through the 70s, 80s, and 90s, you would have a room of people, voters and whatnot, and a screening, and they would watch these documentaries. And the way they did it was so dumb because it would be like fatigue would settle in when you're watching doc after doc after doc. And when they got to Hoop Dreams, these people would have flashlights. And if they basically gave up on the documentary or on the film, they would wave the flashlight at the screen briefly and then put the flashlight back down. And whenever there were so many flashlights, they would turn it off. Hoop Dreams didn't make it 20 minutes through its screening with these voters, with these accounts. Like, God, are you kidding me? And there's a lot of story around it, and I definitely suggest I recommend people go do their own research. Siskel and Ebert were like furious about finding out about this, and they famously both talked about it. Because they both thought it was one of the best movies of the entire year, not just doc, but just films in general. And I agree with them. It's just crazy. There's a lot of stupid shit that happens with the Oscars. We're seeing that it still happens to this day. Coda won Best Picture, and of course the stuff with Will Smith. And there's certain movies not nominated and passed over and snubbed, however you want to put it. But this is something that had to change. And a lot of documentarians were like, you can't do that. You need to watch the whole thing. You need to actually be a grown-up about it and watch the whole doc and then give your 2 cents. If you watch 20 minutes of Hoop Dreams, that's what's 20 minutes out of 180? Like, are you kidding me? That's so silly to me. And when I read that, I was furious and I was like, okay, I get why. But then it's nominated for Best Film Editing because I read also that there were people who liked it and were like, no, like they sought it out after that screening. They sought it out, or people who saw it at Sundance and it won Best Doc there. they pushed for it, and so it got kind of that film editing. We'll throw you in there, and film editing to a cinephile is a huge category and means a whole lot. And a lot of times will tell you who's going to win Best Picture. A lot of times they align Best Film Editing and Best Picture, or at least Best Film Editing will be in the Best Picture category. That happens a lot. But with Hoop Dreams, it just that's all it received. And of course, it should have won Best Documentary, but at least it got something. And that's why we're able to talk about it on Oscar Sunday, because you have to have at least one nomination to be brought up on this show. And so I was like, yeah, fuck it, we got to use it. So this category was won by Forrest Gump. You got Hoop Dreams, Pulp Fiction, Shawshank Redemption, and Speed. Jesus Christ, that's a murderer's row. Those are some amazing movies. If I were choosing, I would vote for Hoop Dreams, because I think simply because there's 250 hours of footage. You narrow it down to 3. You make a good, movie that's pretty easy to follow, even if you don't know a lot about basketball.
Yeah, compelling narrative.
Yeah, Steve James does a good job narrating. He's got kind of a monotone voice that doesn't make you kind of lean one way or the other. You're just kind of in it.
Just telling the story.
That's and that would be my vote. But if I had to go with just a proper feature-length film, it would be Pulp Fiction. I think Pulp Fiction obviously is revolutionary for its storytelling, its plot tropes and the way it's going about jumping around to different things, and the timeline is all wacky. And at the end of the movie, you understand what they're telling you, and I think that's very important for a movie.
Yeah. Real quick, what you just said, I think is important. I didn't really thought about this, but the fact that they just tell the story, I think that's part of the reason it stands the test of time, because there's so clearly not a political bent to it either way, because they're not condemning the people in these in this story for being like relatively low income, and but they're also not like, shame on everyone else because these people are low income or whatever it may be.
Just the facts.
Yeah. There isn't this bend either direction. It's just this is a story, and make of it what you will. Discuss what you want to. Figure out what's interesting to you, and discuss this with whoever you may have seen it with or whatever, or do something like what we're doing right now. Right? Obviously, there's a ton of talking points within it, and things that can branch off. Or you can just watch it and be like, man, that's a crazy story. What a wonderful tale of the American life or whatever. Because I actually think we don't really tell stories like that anymore. There's so clearly an agenda behind most of the documentaries that are made, because either we're going to show why this is bad or this is good or this is whatever. It's and sometimes those are worthwhile projects for sure. Like an Adam McKay movie, which I like all of his movies, and I think he's incredibly talented. But there's a very hard left leaning bend to his stuff.
Correct.
Which I mostly align with, but it's I see why it's alienating to a lot of other people who watch it. I get it, because it's okay, this is clearly telling it clearly has an agenda. But whether the agenda is a worthwhile cause, I agree with. But it's you're going to lose out. You're going to lose people because of
for
of that.
Sure.
Whereas this is just tell the story. Just tell the story, and then we'll see from there. And maybe that's I shouldn't draw a line directly between Adam McKay stuff and this.
No,
they're trying to do different things. But do you see what I'm saying?
I think it's a good example. Yeah, and I think someone like Clint Eastwood is quite the opposite.
Yeah,
is very much taking a conservative standpoint on things, or John Wayne. Is okay, well, I think I know what you're thinking.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of filmmakers now are kind of showing their cards, and I like when a filmmaker is mysterious. And that has a lot to do with, just my personal taste, so I'm going to be much more inclined to watch something by David Lynch, who's fuck the politics. I'm just going to make cool stories. And that's just how it's going to be. Or, I love a Tarantino or a Spike Lee, but it's okay, I get it. Or an Adam McKay. I get what you're saying. But it's, you're showing all of your cards right now.
Mm-hmm.
And I
really know where you stand.
I feel like I'm in the room with you right now, and that's, I don't know.
There's value in that.
There is, especially depending on the story, But if Once Upon a Time in Hollywood would have told the true story, it'd be a completely different film, right? Yeah. Be a completely different film, and I do think there is something it's worth bringing up. I think obviously with documentaries you have major power.
Well, you also have a journalistic integrity,
yes,
uphold. You know what I mean? It's this is not just your opinion. You know what I mean? You're telling this story.
Yeah. I remember finding out more stuff about the doc making a murderer. And I was like, oh, they didn't talk about that. Whereas the other side of oh, this guy actually might have done some pretty fucked up stuff. He might have killed somebody. But in the doc, you're thinking, man, fuck, fuck the DA and all these people who are against him are out to get him. And it's like, well, there's a whole other story, and they don't really talk about it.
Manitowoc County.
Yeah. You're totally against the powers that be when you're watching that. When really they might have been right.
Yeah.
and that should be brought up.
Yeah.
Or if you want to talk about basketball, The Last Dance to me is like, okay, get off Jordan's dick. Like, oh my God. And
that's the executive producer of this.
Yeah. I mean, you're showing footage of him watching an iPad being like, yeah, they sucked. We whooped their ass. It's like, if you would have been more in the middle about it, he'd look even cooler.
Yes.
And yeah, that's the power of documentaries. It's like you have to pick a lane, and sometimes I think the best lane is in the middle. Is like Hoop Dreams. Is just kind of staying out of it, not being a part of it. Steve James is not like, oh, let me get in this scene. And he's just there. He's along for the ride, and buy the ticket, take the ride is what Steve did, and I think that's the smartest way to go. I certainly think film editing, it should have won, and obviously best documentary. I mean, it should have been nominated at least.
Yeah, well, that's what Cookie Girl.
Sucks. That sucks. What's Connor and I always kind of do this just before we get to our own awards. But best picture, I mean, I know you've seen Pulp Fiction, of course.
Oh yeah.
Shawshank and Forrest Gump. Have you seen Four Weddings and a Funeral?
No.
Or Quiz Show?
No.
So those are both fine. It's obviously between those three.
Yeah.
I mean, I love Quiz Show. Like personally, I think it's awesome. Love John Turturro in that movie, but it's not like Shawshank or Pulp. But if it's down to those three, who do you?
Pulp.
Pulp.
Yeah.
Easily.
Oh yeah.
Shawshank, no chance.
Yeah, no, I think Pulp's
Wow.
Shawshank. Yeah.
I love Shawshank.
Yeah, I know I do too, but Pulp is.
I'm with you. My vote would go to Pulp Fiction as well.
Yeah. Certainly not Forrest Gump.
Oh no, I'm not a huge fan of Forrest Gump. I do say sometimes, like we've talked about multiple ceremonies where it comes down to, okay, I like Pulp Fiction. Like I like get my creative rocks off more when watching Pulp Fiction, but Shawshank is like for everybody. Like Pulp Fiction might not be, there might be someone who's like, what the fuck? Like, that was fucked up.
Really
like the whole Gimp scene, like not for me.
Yeah.
But Shawshank is like,
feel good.
If you have a pulse, like how are you not like into that? Even if you're like, it's a little, our brother Jeremy has been like, it's a little gimmicky. It's this Stephen King story. It's a little cheesy at times. I get that, but I could see someone making the argument for like, this is a film when you think of 1994 that everybody likes. I think Shawshank is could be your answer. But I also, if I had a personal vote, it's 100% Pulp Fiction. I had, what more do you need to say about it? Speed should be in there. I fucking love Speed. Connor got to talk about his Lion King. He's obsessed with that one. He's always thought it should have been.
Yeah, Lion King's wonderful
in that group. Yeah, I'm not as big on Lion King. I think because it's so clearly Hamlet.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just like some of the other Disney movies that I prefer seem a little bit more like creative and a little bit more, especially Pixar. What they've done, I think, is like a little bit more out there and trying a little harder to do something unique. But Lion King certainly has, it's beautiful and the music is incredible. So, which it swept up here at this ceremony. Yeah, I always love looking at these. It's kind of the reason I like the Oscars is because it's context. And I'm the same way with basketball, where I kind of need to know if I want to know about something like the late 80s, early 90s. Well, I need to know who was there. I need to know who won, what team almost won, who's the MVP. I need to know all those things because it's context.
Yeah.
How good was Isaiah Thomas? I need to know those things just for my personal. It's just for my brain. Like I just need it. Otherwise, I'm not going to be able to talk about it or go on with it. And that's just how it is. Today, I was at you'll love this. I was at Freebirds getting food with my coworker Jeff, and we Jeff's also a big basketball fan, huge MJ guy, and I've always been love MJ, love LeBron, love all the greats. There's very few of them that I don't enjoy, and these kids, there are these three kids all in high school. They all go to a high school around where Freebirds is at, Johnson High School. They were wearing Johnson tennis, and one of them was wearing a Johnson basketball shirt, and they were talking about how LeBron's like undisputed the GOAT or whatever, and I was like, oh man. And one of the kids was like, I don't know, man, like MJ his peak, you know? And I was like, this is great. They're like 15 or 16. And I said, what about Kareem? And one of the kids goes, he's pretty good. And Jeff goes, pretty good. He was like, the guy's fucking incredible, you know? And so we started talking to these kids. And he's like, well, if you're going to go there, you got to go Wilt. You got to go Bill Russell. And I was like, that's fair, yeah. I was like, what about Magic and Bird? He's like, I don't know, man. They didn't play very long. And I was like, oh, this is amazing. I was like, MJ didn't play very long. They're like, okay. And the kid goes, what I think is people who were born in the 60s, 70s, or 80s are never going to let down that Jordan's the GOAT. They're never going to let it down. He's going to people who are born after actually look at what's happened.
Yeah.
And Jeff was like, no. Because Jeff was born in the 70s, so late 70s. So he's like very much a Jordan head and was like, no, man, like there's.
I was there.
Yeah. He's like, like if you would have seen him on TV, man, as if we can't see YouTube videos. Yeah. I thought it was really cool, but like, I'm like that. I'm like those kids. Like, I need that conversation. I need that context. That kind of like, let's figure it out. Even if it's useless, let's figure it out.
Yeah, that's cool. I love that, man. I would have loved that conversation. Yeah.
I was like, I have to chime in. And Kareem's always been to me, well, not always, but the past probably 4 or 5 years, as I look into it, if I'm trying to be unbiased, if I'm trying to just look at career, Kareem, I think he has the best career overall. So I've always kind of wanted to throw him into the ring.
Yeah, it's a holy trinity to me. There's a clear top. Yeah.
I think a lot of smart people nowadays agree with you. But let's get to these. Let's get to these awards. We have the Tarantino Award for Best Quote. We have the Ennio Morricone Award for the Best Music Moment, which this score is really cool from this movie. We have there's also a great soundtrack, so you can kind of choose either of those. Then there's the Philip Seymour Hoffman Award for Best Performance. Obviously, for a doc, you're kind of just choosing your favorite person that, appeared in the documentary, your favorite person. If you had to pick, how I look at it for when we did Mind in the Gap and we did Undefeated, it was like, if this had to be about one person, like who would you probably go with? And then the Roger Deakins Award was for the best scene or the best moment of the documentary. So I'll let you start and I'll finish this off. So we'll just go back and forth.
Okay. Can I start the Ennio Morricone one?
Yeah, sure.
I think the first Public Enemy drop, where it's just like, okay, they're kind of putting us in this world. This is great.
Yes.
And the score is great. But that's the first time where I was like, okay, like this is gonna be good. Yeah. This era is like rap is booming, and that was my favorite music moment.
Okay. Yeah, I like that. I went a similar route. I went with Turn Off the Radio by Ice Cube when Arthur's in his room and he's just listening to it, and it has the audio bit from Do the Right Thing, which is just so cool. It's such like interesting little, There's also, we've talked about how there's a lot of basketball stuff happening. Movies are changing like fucking crazy. This is Do the Right Thing. Boys in the Hood comes out in 91. Like black kids have movies to look up to, and that's fucking huge. That representation. And I Ice Cube, Public Enemy, can't go wrong.
Yeah, that's a big one. Okay. The PSH Award. Okay. I mean, it's hard to say you make it about anything but the two kids, but I would go Sheila, Arthur's mom. I mean,
wow. Okay. Yeah. I love that.
Yeah.
She's a hero.
Yeah. What a beautiful tale of perseverance and just fierce love of her kids, fierce. You know what I mean? And the scene where I'm so glad the movie did this, and this is why I totally get why I wanted editing, because they didn't have to include stuff about her or whatever it may be, but they have this whole little bit about her, becoming a nurse and graduating the top of her class, and that little group, them singing the song is that little, she'd been kind of dragged through the mud through just life circumstances for most of the film, and then at the end we get that, and there's such a triumphant moment of okay, yeah, maybe these two boys careers didn't go quite exactly how we all thought it might go, but she won. Yeah, she figured out a way to better her surrounding and better herself through her own just will and desire to just to keep learning, to keep striving for a dream and chasing it. You know what I mean? I thought it was so cool. I thought it was maybe this didn't go exactly how they wanted to, but for Sheila it did. She obtained this dream that she had. And I thought that was so cool.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I definitely thought about her. I thought about a few people. I thought about obviously Will and Arthur. I thought about Sheila. And then I thought about just kind of, because sometimes, Connor and I will choose a villain from a movie or someone who's fucked up. And Curtis makes me think probably more than anyone. So I thought about him as well. But ultimately I went with my gut. I went with Arthur. Uh, I love that kid. Like, even though he's a full grown adult now, I'll always see him as this young skinny hooper that could have been like one of the coolest point guards ever. And of course, that's one of the best positions in sports, in my opinion, is someone who controls the pace of something. And he had a cool tempo. I'll say that. He had a weird understanding of the game and understanding of life because of his circumstances, but when he was on the court, it was really cool. And to go back to Isaiah Thomas on the Bad Boys, also ESPN films. I don't think it's a 30 for 30. I think it came out after they were done with the 30 for 30. That Bad Boys one about the mid 80s, late 80s Pistons, and into 1990. They talk about Isaiah Thomas, and they talk about how when he was playing, it was like he was running from something when he was on the court. Like he didn't know exactly what it was. And I thought the same thing about Arthur. It was like, man, he has this crazy pace and speed to him.
Well, and he wears number 11. Just
Yep.
Like Isaiah.
Yeah, and had the nickname Tuss, just like Isaiah Thomas.
Yeah.
And he put it on his shoes. And it made me like Isaiah Thomas more, which is like the power of Arthur.
I had a note about that. I think, and I've read this in other places, and Isaiah Thomas himself has talked about being disappointed in how Michael Jordan didn't give back to the community of Chicago as much. He lived out in the suburbs. He didn't go back in the summers and do stuff there. I mean, he did some stuff in North Carolina and did the occasional charity thing. But, Jordan was so about the marketing part and,
business.
Like, the business side where Isaiah really did. And that's why he was so frustrated at sometimes Chicago's reception of him and their embracing of MJ, which, I get it. MJ's winning them championships, whatever.
Yeah.
But Isaiah was playing for the rival. But I think Isaiah viewed that as a little bit of a slight because it's like, look, no, I'm the one who comes back here in the summers and I put on these free camps and I help these kids out. And you see him in the film, he comes in and does that little camp for the kids.
Yeah.
And he's decked out in his practice uniform and all that stuff. And it's like, I think he really cared about the community that he came from and like really tried to give back to it.
Still does.
I did. Yeah, definitely still does. And then listening to Icons Club too. Which there's been some stuff about him. I mean, obviously he's had some issues in his life, but there's been some stuff that's come out about him that's like, okay, that's actually really interesting. I don't think I knew how much he cared about like the generation that came after him. And you know what I mean? He really is an interesting guy.
He's about it. Yeah.
Interesting guy. Yeah.
He's totally about it. Yeah. Yeah. I've had a roller coaster with Isaiah Thomas as a basketball fan, but I could talk about him for days. He's a fascinating dude. So,
okay. So
Tarantino and then,
the Tarantino
and then Deakins. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I went with the talent scout who I'm trying to remember what his name is, but he's the one that discovers him in 8th grade and kind of like helps them get to St. Joe's. And here is the full quotes. Okay, he says, this is at the end of the movie after like some of the stuff that's happened, and they interview. It's right before I think he takes Arthur to that game because remember that one game he actually takes him there. He drives him there. He says, "I've got a bitter taste in my mouth about a lot of things that have happened. A lot of people accuse me of taking youngsters out of the city and taking them out to St. Joe High School, and they ask what I get out of the deal. A lot of racial slurs and so forth from my own people about me, about what I did. I still felt and feel that I was doing the right thing for that particular time. Sometimes I have second thoughts when I see the net results of what happened with youngsters." I thought that was just like wow.
Wraps everything. Yeah.
It's like, I mean, I think the intentions are sometimes good. And I think there are probably kids that he really, really did help, that he took them out of a situation that was probably really dicey and gave them a little bit more stability, and that helped. But I also think there were kids that I think he thought he was giving that to, and it actually like negatively affected them. And he's kind of got to live with that. But we all have to live with stuff like that, when we try to help people, especially if you're in a world where you're really trying to help people who you think need help. It's like that. That's tough, man. You have to live with a lot of different stuff.
Yeah, that's a great pick. I remember when I was watching it a couple nights ago is when I watched it, and when you get to that point, you're just kind of you kind of need that. You're like, someone say something. Someone fucking say something that matters at the end of the film, because you're just like, this is madness.
Well, and I think as he's saying it too, he's just you can tell he's conflicted. You know what I mean? He's like, I don't know, man.
Yeah,
I don't know if that was the right thing.
Yeah, he's an interesting cat, isn't he?
Yeah,
you could make a whole 3-hour doc about him. Yeah, great pick. I went with Spike Lee's quote. One of my heroes.
When they're at the camp.
One of my heroes for sure. Yeah, they're at the Nike camp, and they showed Dick Vitale screaming and whatever, doing his bit that like mattered zero. But then Spike Lee comes out and says some pretty challenging stuff, and I just thought it was incredible. And this is again like fresh off Do the Right Thing. So this is a hero, an American hero at the time. You have to realize that nobody cares about you. You're black, You're a young male. All you're supposed to do is deal drugs and mug women. The only reason why you're here, you can make their team fucking win. If their team wins, these schools get a lot of money. This whole thing revolves around money. It's like, damn.
Love and hate.
Yeah. Yep. There it is. Yeah. Crazy how he's able to just. I mean, I'm sure there were people at the camp who were like, "What the fuck, dude? Like, what's your problem?"
Like, I was saying, you said American hero. I was like, to some.
Yeah. No, some people were probably really upset at that time with him. I mean, he is so iconic, obviously in the Black community and as a filmmaker, and just what he's able to the balls he has.
Yeah, at that time, he's much more of a provocateur than he is,
today, now he's
mellowed out a little bit.
Yeah, he's still making films, right? And he's making decent stuff. Black Klansman's not bad, and Defy Bloods is pretty good, and he's still got it as a filmmaker. But man, he in the late '80s, early '90s, like, whoa, boy, this guy was insane. I mean, Crooklyn comes out. One of my favorite Spike Lee movies comes out in 1994, and just fascinating stuff. Yeah, that guy's fucking incredible. So I had to go with that. When I saw him, when I was younger and I watched this, I think I watched this in 8th grade for the first time, and that went over my head. Went completely over my head.
Yeah.
What? Like, who's that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Who's this? Who's this short guy with the glasses? Yeah. Like,
it rings a little more. Yeah. Now, but
yeah. Anyway,
okay,
the Roger Deakins. Here we go.
Okay. So I think I would give it to that short little bit when we see Arthur's dad throw his jacket up in the air after they win that one playoff game, because I think that's such a sign of like his personal evolution, because he obviously has quite a and I definitely still feel quite conflicted about him once it was over, because even in the success that Arthur was having, he was trying to interject himself into some of it. It's like Junior or whatever, like reminder that he's accomplished what I never did. It's like it's always like part of him has to be there too. It's like, no, this can just be about Arthur. Like, yeah, it's just Arthur succeeding. But I think there's just it's pure joy in just like how he celebrates. Like, how cool is this? I've like made it through some of this addiction stuff. Here I am watching my son win this game that like nobody expected him to win. He's having so much fun, and like this is just amazing.
This is a better drug.
I am safe right now, and I can just have this moment of joy. That was cool.
Yeah, that's a great pick. Yeah, in a documentary that's filled with moments, like little moments that just keep happening on top of each other. Yeah, that's a great pick. I went with a proper scene, and it's when Bo and Arthur are playing one-on-one towards closer to the end of the film. They both have like their shirts off. It's like father-son, just like animalistic. Like, whoa, it's kind of scary. It reminds me a lot of this scene between Denzel and young Jesus Shuttlesworth, another Spike Lee movie from 1998. Clearly inspired by this moment in the documentary. That's just, you're watching the dad.
He Got Game is the name of that, by the way.
Yeah. Decent flick. One of my favorite Denzel performances for sure. One of my favorite Spikes. Probably my second favorite Spike movie of all time, behind Do the Right Thing. But it's such a cool look, and dark and scary, and all the things, all the emotions going through.
Well, it gets so awkward.
Yes.
Everybody watching is like, oh, this.
You can't do that, Bo. He really fouls the shit out of him.
It's really personal. Yeah.
Well, because he's like draining threes. He's like, let it rain.
Yeah.
Which was really cool to see him like, oh, he had game. Like Bo probably was pretty damn good. And then Arthur's just like schooling him, and then he's like, oh, I'm just gonna foul the shit out of him. And it gets weird. And man, I thought about that. People are weird. People, when they're put into situations like that, especially with the camera, get fucking weird. Yeah. And I thought that was like one of the more humanistic, wild moments of the film that I just was like glued to the screen.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, dude, Bo, read the room,
Yeah.
Like, it's okay. Everyone's just like having fun. And like, this could be such a fun moment of just like kind of some gentle ribbing. And like, he obviously is still good. He's still got it a little bit. And he's not that old either. I mean, such a thing too. Is like, so it's like, you can have your cake and eat it too here. You know what I mean? It's like, have some fun. Sure, your son, you can still play a little bit, but he should get the last laugh. It's his moment. It's his, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it just showed that Arthur, and that's part of, or Bo, he's like, he wasn't capable of just like moving to the side, you know what I mean? And just being like, hey, like, this isn't about me right now. That's what that was like his, one of his fatal flaws. I mean, he just couldn't do that. Even like I said, even in the moments where they're trying to celebrate him, sometimes it's like, oh yeah, like, remember, he's a junior. He was like, or whatever. It's like, just little stuff like that's like, what's the point of saying that? You know what I mean? Like, I don't know.
Gosh.
But then he also has the beautiful moment of him telling him, he said, he said he loves me. I know he's,
that was, like, you can feel it.
He hasn't vocalized it. Yeah. I was like, wow, that was
you could choose a lot of stuff for the Deakins. there's some great moments in this. Hoop Dreams. It's on Criterion Channel. It's on HBO Max. Luckily, I own it, so I can always throw it on no matter what. Thanks, Connor. He bought me that for Christmas, I believe, on Criterion, like the Criterion edition. Yeah, it's very cool.
Yeah. Last thing, real quick, before we wrap up, I have to shout the gear. I mean, I've mentioned it before. The jackets, the Bulls hats, the jerseys, the Georgetown stuff. I mean, Georgetown obviously was like so big at this time, like the Hoya Paranoia and all that stuff, and especially in the Black community. But
John Thompson, baby.
Yeah, but man, there's so many things I was like, man, that would fetch a lot of money on eBay right now, or like I would love to have that in my closet right now. Like, yeah, some of their gear was just like so dope.
Yeah, fucking awesome. Yeah, this was a lot of fun. There's some amazing stuff to talk about with Hoop Dreams. Definitely rewatch it if you haven't in a while. Tomorrow on Sneak Preview, we have Ambulance and Sonic the Hedgehog 2, along with a little bit about Everything Everywhere All at Once. On Wednesday, Filmgazm, Hook. That'll be Connor and Colton tackling that movie. And then on Beyond the Bad on Friday, Nothing But Trouble. Get ready to hear about some shit. And the next week on Oscar Sunday, Connor and I will be back together talking about Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 2. We're going to be doing a Harry Potter Character Hall of Fame. It's going to be a lot of fun. We can't wait. So stick with us this week.